This first video was uploaded by a YouTuber who created his channel to document the weird things going on in his house. He finds that the screwdriver on his kitchen counter seems to be moving on its own, so he checks under the cabinet to apparently show there's no kind of trickery underneath, and also shows there's no kinds of magnets or anything when he picks up the screwdriver. After that, stomps can be heard from above him in the attic, so he goes up there to check.
Hello? Hello?
After finding nothing, the video cuts out. Randonautica is an app that sends you on a random adventure to explore the world around you. The app randomly generates a point on the map that you have to follow the way to. People have been reporting finding weird and paranormal things at their destinations, such as in this video. The app sent the person who recorded this video to a ditch in the middle of nowhere by a highway. Inside of the ditch, he found one tricycle and one small bike with training wheels. At the end of the video, very faint children's laughter can be heard. This is a short and straightforward clip of a man sitting in his bed in a dimly lit room who started recording after hearing noises and seeing his door slightly move. This is what he caught. The man was brave enough to get up right away and check the darkness outside of his bedroom, only to find nothing. This video was filmed by a boy recording his friend jumping into his trampoline. As the two are having their fun, you can notice something in the left corner of the video. You can see a figure dressed in white with black hair crawling out from under the trampoline. To this day, the two say they have no idea who the person was. This footage was taken by YouTuber Franco TV, the location being the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in Tennessee, regarded as one of the most haunted buildings in America. Throughout the video, various sounds and voices can be heard, and things can be seen moving throughout the hospital. As Franco enters the in-house pharmacy, viewers believe they can hear a voice saying either "get out" or "hello." Seconds later, 3 medicine bottles fall over completely on their own.
My night vision, the other side there. Whoa. Are you kidding me? Look at this. No freaking way. I literally... What the hell was that? All these bottles just got pushed down. Frontwards and backwards. And it's oxycodone. That is a very, very addictive drug. And there is a spirit here that haunts this place that apparently is always waiting for a drug dealer or whatever to come in here that overdosed in this hospital.
Later on in the video, after many creepy mannequins, dolls, and moving objects later, Franco finds himself in a hallway where a child's horse toy is seen rocking back and forth on its own and making noises. This leads Franco to believe there's a child spirit in the hallway with him.
Oh my God. That horse is moving. And it's on. What the hell? Is that your horse? Do you like playing with the horse? I feel like this is like a child's spirit in this room. And it oddly got actually cold.
The video truly does make this hospital seem like a hotbed of paranormal activity. This is the video a Redditor captured of their baby. The baby seems to be struggling to hold onto the remote, as though an unseen presence is trying to grab it from him. The baby even says no and stop. If that doesn't convince you, the truly shocking part is towards the end of the video here, where the remote can literally be seen flying out of the baby's hands to the left, only for him to reach and grab it to stop it. So was this a setup by the parents, or was something else really in the room trying to grab the remote from the child? This is another video involving a baby, this one captured on a baby monitor. Throughout the video, an orb can be seen hovering over the baby's crib. However, on a few separate occasions, the baby's legs can be seen being pulled by something, though you can't see by what. The movement is not one the baby would be able to make on its own, as it can actually be seen being dragged around the crib. The orb also seems to move in the general direction that the baby is being pulled. Given that not many sane parents would be willing to set up a rather cruel hoax like this, it may be a little less easy to dismiss. This one is really freaky. This is the footage captured by a surveillance camera aimed at a valuable World War II era ventriloquist doll in its case. In the middle of one night, the case door begins to swing open and closed, but the most disturbing part of the video is when the doll's eyes open and close and its lips appear to move. In addition to this, orbs can be seen flying around throughout the video. How would you personally try to explain this one? Most new cars these days come equipped with high-tech camera systems, some of which can detect when a person is present around the car to help the driver stay more aware and avoid hitting anyone. But what if your car detected someone that wasn't there? This man took out his phone and began to record when he noticed on the dashboard of his M3 that the car was sensing the presence of a person in the front right of the car. However, there is no one visibly standing out there. This could seem like a scene straight from the movie Bird Box. This last video was taken during a police operation in Brazil in what appears to be an abandoned hospital. The police all seem to be confused and shook as they witness what appears to be a door repeatedly swinging open and slamming shut on its own.
Cuidado, Judá. Cuidado, mano. Que é isso, mano?
Mano, não tem nada.
Caralho, mano. Que é isso, bicho? Caralho, mano. Mano, que é isso, bicho?
As they examine the door, no strings or any other forms of trickery could be seen in the video.
É doido, Deus me livre, mano. Vai, mano, vai, mano. Vai, mano, vai, mano. Vai, mano.
The group of officers run away after something behind them falls. It's unknown what it was. This holds up to be one of the more credible videos that have recently surfaced on the internet.
I remember this just vaguely, since I was little at the time, maybe 7. In my old house, my room had its own floor. It wasn't even supposed to be a bedroom. It was more of an attachment to the attic, or a closet type room. The people that owned the house before us used it as a playroom for their daughters. My room also had a huge closet door that was attached to the attic. The closet was elevated up so that you would have to climb a set of wooden stairs to get into it. It had a big sliding door, and it was completely packed with toys and other junk from my childhood. Since I was little at the time, I always got scared of being so separated from the rest of my family and having that huge closet in my room. Then there was this one night. I was laying in bed, afraid after watching a scary movie with my family. Then I heard the sound of a toy fall over up in the closet. I jumped out of my bed and ran to my parents' room. They told me there was no one in my closet. They saw how afraid I was, so they let me sleep in their room that night. The next night, I had kind of forgotten about it until I heard it again. The sound of a container of Legos spilling out everywhere up in the closet. Again, I ran to my parents' room and told them about it. My dad was starting to grow impatient with me. He reluctantly agreed to let me sleep in their room again. The next day, me and my mom checked the closet, and there it was. A pile of Legos lay on the floor, spilled out of the container. I thought this was proof that somebody was in my closet, but my mom assured me that it simply fell over. That night, my dad locked his door. He said he was tired of my nonsense. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there completely silent with my young boy imagination running, waiting for another sound to come from the closet. It was probably about an hour before it happened. It broke the silence. The sound of the closet door rolling open with force. The moonlight shining through my window illuminated the figure standing by my closet door. I let out the most horrific, ear-piercing scream you've ever heard, as pure terror swept over my body, a feeling that I still remember today. The figure jumped down from the closet and ran out of my room and out the front door of my house. My mom ran up to my room in shock, as my dad ran downstairs trying to catch whoever it was, but he never did. The police never caught the man. When I was in 8th grade, I went on a school trip that was called the Louisiana Tour. It was mostly going around to significant sites in South Louisiana. One of the places we went to was Myrtle's Plantation, which is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country. There are all kinds of stories about the place, but at one point we were standing in a room as a part of a larger group, and the tour guide was talking about something. I don't remember what. As I'm standing there, I start to hear what sounds like someone hitting a piano key. After I heard it a couple times, I started to look around for the source of the sound. I didn't see a piano, but I kept hearing it, so I asked my friends who were standing near me if they heard it. They said no. When I heard it again, I said there it is again, they must have heard it. They thought I was crazy. So I went back to looking around the room. Everyone's eyes were on the tour guide except for one woman. She caught my eye and pointed at me, and then at her ear with a questioning look. I realized she was asking if I heard it too, and I nodded. At this point, the tour guide starts telling a story about a soldier who had died there and that he played the piano, and multiple guests had reported hearing him playing in the night. I honestly didn't know what to think. I guess I still don't. I talked to the woman as we were all leaving the room, and she said she heard the exact same thing as me, but her husband and son had not heard it. It was near Halloween time when my friends and I were telling ghost stories. My friend said she was going to tell a story about her parents' first date. She said she didn't like telling the stories since it was actually true, but we prodded her on. To cut to the chase, the parents had a nice, if awkward, first date, and around the time that they would have said goodnight, The male in this situation, who's my friend's dad, suggested that they go for a midnight hike up Provo Canyon. He apparently knew the place since he had done a fair amount of rock climbing in the area. So the two drove up the mouth of the canyon, got out of their cars and started hiking under just the light of the stars since it was a new moon. At some point, the man starts getting a bad feeling since the pathway ahead, which would pass under some trees, would be dark, and because it was getting quite late. He ignores the feeling and presses on. A minute later, the feeling came back to the man. He ignored it again and started walking a bit of the way into the trees when his foot hit something soft in the middle of the path. Under the trees, it was too dark to see just what this soft thing was, and the feeling came back stronger than ever. Instead of finding out what his foot had bumped into, he and the woman both agreed to hightail it out of there. Years later, after being married for some time, they were watching an interview with the serial killer Ted Bundy. In response to a question asking him to describe the time that he felt the closest to being caught, he explained about the night that he lured a girl into Provo Canyon and had just killed her when he heard some people coming up the trail. He explained how he hid in the trees just in time, only to watch some guy walk right into the body, and for some reason, just turn around and walk away. My school's library is open until 2 in the morning for the idiots like me that don't do their essays until the last minute. It's a pretty small building and most of the books are in the basement area called the stacks. Just to give you a quick layout, there's the big main stairs that go down to the stacks, a vending machine room, and the long hallway with the 4 entrances into the stacks. The stacks are 2 really big rooms on opposite sides of the hallway with a huge amount of bookshelves and study desks lining the walls. I was there around 11 p.m. last year. It was a pretty research-intensive essay, so I was down in the stacks working in one of the study desks, so I didn't have to keep going upstairs and downstairs again. I had been there for maybe 2 hours, and everyone except for a boy working a few desks down from me had already left. I was pretty zoned out by this point. It was an 8 a.m. class, so I didn't have much time until it was due, and I was sort of panicking. So it really pissed me off when I heard someone flipping through book pages really fast to make them do that loud whipping noise at the other end of the room. I sort of ignored it for a while, thinking they'd go away eventually, but they just kept doing it. After about 5 minutes, I got sick of it and started to walk over to tell them to knock it off. I get about 3 steps across the room and it just stops. I sat back down and it was quiet again, only for like 10 minutes before the flipping pages noise started again, only loads louder, like they'd grabbed a huge book that time. The boy started to get pissed off too, and he stood up and started walking around through the bookshelves trying to find them. It kept going, so I got up too and started looking around with him. It got really loud and it was pretty obvious where it was coming from by that point, so we started walking towards it. He was on one side of the shelves and I was on the other. We walked all the way down the shelves. No one there. We hadn't seen anyone come in the stacks and we were on the side of the room with the entrances. No way could anyone have come in without us seeing them. The noise stopped again and we both sort of just slowly walked back to our seats. I assumed it was just a fan or something in the other room, and I really needed to get my essay done. We sat down, and immediately the noises started again. It sounded like it was coming from right next to the guy's chair. He shoved his stuff in his bag, looked at me, said, "Fuck this," and took off. I was out of there maybe 5 seconds behind him. I still won't go back in the stacks at night, even when there's other people down there. This happened when I still had my fishing boat. It was a horrifying experience that will never leave us. Me and my wife departed from the East Coast for our 2-day fishing trip in the North Atlantic. The first day and night were normal. We got a decent catch. At night we played cards while listening to music. It was enjoyable up until the next night. After a slow day at sea, we were playing cards again inside, this night without the music. It was at that moment that we heard the sound of a boat motor. We rushed outside to see a man piloting a crappy old motorboat with absolutely no lights on. He had stopped directly in front of our bow. The man was middle-aged. He had a beard and a baseball cap on. I went up closer and asked him if he needed help. He asked us if we had any spare gasoline. I apologized and told him we didn't. I asked the man if he was low on fuel and if he needed a ride back to the shore, but he declined. He claimed he had plenty of gas, which brought an awkward silence as me and my wife wondered why he asked us for gas then. The silence started to creep me and my wife out, mostly because of the way he just blankly stared at me. The only reason I could see was because of the deck light in the front of our boat. Other than that, we were surrounded by darkness. The man finally broke the silence and asked us if we had a good catch that day. I told him we didn't, still trying to be polite, even though the situation was odd and creepy. I asked the man how he was getting around in the darkness, but all he gave me was a chuckle, as if I had made a joke. I figured he misheard me. He turned his little motorboat around, and the last thing he said to us was, "Nice meeting you folks." He sailed off into the total blackness surrounding us. Me and my wife were completely weirded out. My wife told me she was afraid he was going to rob us. Being a fisher, you run into and make conversation with other sailors and fishers all the time, but I knew something about that guy was off. The fact that he came up to us so late at night, so far from the shore, and alone in that little motorboat, and the way he acted, we were both really uncomfortable, so I decided to turn out our lights and sail a bit north just to make sure the guy couldn't find us again. Call me paranoid. Later that night, probably around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the disturbing and ear-piercing scream of my wife. I shot up from my laying position to see a man standing at the edge of our bed. I lunged out of the bed towards the man, but he was out of the cabin before I could even get out of the room. I heard the sound of the same motorboat starting before speeding away into the darkness again. We sailed all the way back to the shore that night and reported the man right away. Of course, nothing was ever heard of the topic again. We still have no idea what the man wanted or what he was planning on doing, but it still gives me nightmares to this day. The way my bedroom was laid out was that across the room from my bed, there's a small alcove that does not receive any light because of the closet that's slightly in front of it. So the closet blocks the ceiling light and the ambient light from outside when it's dark. I was in 4th year high school and was trying to sleep but couldn't. You know that feeling like someone's staring at you? I was feeling it. I couldn't shake it, and it just felt like whatever was staring at me had such malicious intent in it. I opened my eyes and my gaze was drawn to that dark corner of the room where I saw a hazy, darker outline in it. I got goosebumps, but thought that it was nothing there. I'm just imagining things. I closed my eyes again, trying to force myself to get sleep, but I can't shake that evil feeling stare. Then, there was a creak sound, the sound from somebody putting pressure on the floor. I opened my eyes again, and that shadow thing was in the opposite corner now. All my inner senses went ballistic, and I threw my pillow and blanket over my head as I cried myself to sleep, all while hoping that the thing wouldn't come closer. I know I didn't imagine or dream it, and it still sends chills down my spine to this day. It was the first time my family ever went camping together. I was 18 at the time. We probably wouldn't have gone if it weren't for my brother and sister who were still only 11 and happened to be twins. It was mid-July and I was actually excited to do it. We drove all the way out to the country. We didn't go to a camping site. My dad just parked the car on the side of a quiet road, and we hiked about a mile into the woods until we found a small clearing in the woods. We pitched our 2 tents, one for me and my siblings and one for my parents. So come nighttime, I couldn't sleep at all. Trying to fall asleep in that sleeping bag was like trying to fall asleep on the grass. I just couldn't get to sleep. I spun around and tried to make myself comfortable for hours. My little brother and sister had been asleep for a long time at that point. And then I heard the sound of the zipper to the tent zipping down. I looked up and saw someone poking their head into the tent. I couldn't see who it was. "Dad?" I whispered. Whoever it was removed their head from the inside of the tent. "Dad?" I said louder. Whoever it was quickly moved away from the tent, leaving it unzipped. I was so confused. I was sure it was my mom or dad just checking on me, so I crawled out of the tent and walked over to my parents' tent. I unzipped it and crawled inside. My parents were both in their sleeping bags. I shook my dad until he woke up. I asked him if he had just checked on us. He said no. I got chills as he said it. I then woke up my mom, hoping that it was her, but she groggily told me that she hadn't left the tent either. I got goosebumps all over as I came to the realization that somebody actually came up to our tent, opened up the zipper, and peered inside. A stranger. For all I know, some sort of psycho. I couldn't even really tell if my parents took me seriously or not, or maybe I just don't remember. But I do remember that I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. My parents were on their honeymoon to Key West. When they arrived at the hotel to check in, they were told that the room would be non-smoking. With my dad being a smoker, they requested a different room. They got the room switch and went to their room. As they got off the elevator, the smell of fresh paint was overwhelming. Down the hall there was a painter with all necessary supplies laid out around him as he was painting the wall. As my parents walked past him, they casually greeted him, and the painter had absolutely no acknowledgement of their presence. Whatever. When they got to their room, the smell of paint was even worse in there. So bad it wasn't even bearable, so they decided to go to the front desk to change rooms. When they explained the situation, the attendant looked very confused and informed them that there wasn't a scheduled paint job on that floor for that day, but agreed to change their room anyway. My parents go back to their floor to grab their luggage, and the painter is completely gone. All supplies cleaned up and gone within 10 minutes, and the smell of paint was completely gone. At this point, my parents were freaked out, but didn't think much of it and went to their new room. The next morning on their way to breakfast, they overhear a tour guide talking to a group. My parents tuned in when the guide mentioned the floor that they were originally supposed to stay on. Apparently a long time ago, there was a painter on that floor painting and fell down the elevator shaft to his death. Now my parents don't normally believe in the paranormal, but after an event like this that they had no explanation for, it freaked them out a good bit. This story didn't happen to me, it happened to my cousin, and yet it still freaks me out thinking about it. This story is all too true. My cousin Nikki was on Skype with his girlfriend Sam at around 1 in the morning on a Friday night. She was asking him to come over and stay the night, but he didn't really want to drive over that late. Sometime into the conversation, Nikki noticed the closet door behind Sam open a crack. Nikki pointed it out, and Sammy turned and looked at the closet. They both ended up ignoring it. It was probably another half hour into the conversation that the closet door creaked open even more. Nikki spotted it again and told Sam that her little brother must be hiding in the closet. She denied it and told him the window was open or something, so there must have been a draft. It was about half an hour later that the closet door completely opened and somebody stepped out of the closet and walked out of Sam's bedroom. Sam didn't seem to notice, but Nikki got startled from what he just saw. He told her that her little brother was hiding in her closet, but what she said next scared Nikki shitless. She told him that she was home alone that night. Nikki started yelling at the screen for her to lock her door and call the police, and that he would be over there as fast as he could. Sam just started to understand the situation as she turned and saw the closet door completely open. She ran over to her doorway and let out a blood-curdling scream before slamming the door shut and locking it. Nikki drove over as fast as he could while calling the police. When he got there, the front door was left open, so he ran into the house into Sam's room. He knocked on the door and told her it was him, but she wouldn't answer. When the police finally arrived, they busted open the door to find her curled up in the corner of the room in shock. She later told the police that she had seen somebody standing face to face with her at the doorway before shutting the door. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind of stormy that I loved, thunder and lightning roaring, so I was staying up late watching movies. I lived with my dad, but he wasn't home that night, he was working nights. Anyway, after I finished watching the movie Forrest Gump for the 100th time, I decided 2 AM was a good time to get some shut-eye. I loved going to sleep during thunderstorms, It was just enjoyable to listen to, but suddenly, I heard the sound of something hitting my window. It wasn't the sound of rain hitting the window, but in such a big storm I didn't think much of it and put my head back down. But a few seconds later, the same noise. Something hits the window again. This time I made the sound out to be a rock hitting the window. My heart started racing. It couldn't be my dad. He would call if something was wrong. Another rock hits the window. I found myself glued to my bed. I didn't want to look out the window, but whoever was outside surely knew I was up there. I had just turned the TV off. They could have seen the bright glare through the window. I just decided if I ignored it, they would go away. Another rock hit the window, and then another. It was getting faster. The rain started to lighten up, and that's when I heard the sound of a truck engine running down in the street. A much louder thump to the window was where I drew the line. I got out of my bed planning to call the cops. I ran down the stairs towards the phone, but as I passed the front door, I saw something. Something through the glass window at the top of the door. It was the face of a person looking through to me. It seemed like they had a smile on their face. I sprinted to the kitchen and called the police. They said there was an officer nearby, and they should be there shortly. Whoever was at the door started fiddling with the doorknob and eventually ramming into it, trying to bust it open. I grabbed a knife for protection and yelled that the police were coming, before running back upstairs to my room. After about a minute, the ramming to the door stopped and there were no more rocks hitting my window. I still didn't dare to look out the window, but I remember hearing the sound of the truck drive off. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of a police siren outside, and moments later, the doorbell rang. I explained everything to the officer. I described the face as best as I could. Unfortunately, I couldn't provide him any information about the vehicle. If only I had looked out the window. I still regret not taking a quick look. There was never enough info for the police to catch these people. Not sure if they had intention of robbing my house, or much worse. So throughout history, there have been some ferocious creatures that have roamed the earth, and it seems the biggest and most dangerous have since gone extinct. For this list, I won't be including very well-known animals such as the Spinosaurus or T-Rex, or for the most part, any other dinosaurs. Number 10, Gigantopithecus. This creature was a monstrous ape, closely related to the orangutan that roamed the bamboo forests, jungles, and mountains of China, India, and Vietnam during the Pleistocene time period. It was a vegetarian, but still probably not a sight for sore eyes. It could grow up to 3 meters tall and weigh up to 1,200 pounds.
Okay, sweet.
Its strength was undoubtedly extraordinary and probably kept it safe from most predators, and it probably would not hesitate to use its strength against a human who got too close for its comfort.
This is what my channel looks
It
like.
went extinct 300,000 years ago, possibly due to overhunting by early humans, or as the result of climate change. Number 9, 3-foot-long scorpions. Officially known as Pomanoscorpius, these creatures were very similar to today's scorpions, but could grow up to a meter long and were armed with sharp claws and a venomous stinger. It's not known how deadly the venom was, but considering the large amount it injected with each attack, it was more than likely very deadly. During the time period that these things were around, there were also giant roaches the size of house cats, dragonflies the size of hawks, and millipede relatives up to 3 meters long. Number 8, giant crocodiles. If normal crocodiles weren't bad enough, there was once a creature now known as Purosaurus, which was more than twice the size of a regular crocodile. It lived in South America 8 million years ago, and would grow up to 13 meters long. That's more than twice as long as the largest species of crocodile alive today. It would be fully capable of swallowing a human whole. These giant crocodiles were capable of fighting T-Rexes and winning. Number 7, Quetzalcoatlus. Undoubtedly the most horrifying living thing to ever come from the sky, these creatures were gigantic predatory birds standing at about roughly the same height as a giraffe. Some of them had wingspans of 12 to 15 meters, making them as large as a small plane. What was rather strange about the creatures were their body proportions. They had ridiculously long legs, necks, and beaks, and very small bodies, as well as relatively short wings. Scientists believe that they did not hunt in the air, but rather walked on the ground, hunting for any animal they could catch and swallow whole, and that may have included dog-sized or maybe even man-sized creatures. Number 6. Megalodon. This enormous, extinct creature is the biggest species of shark to have ever existed. It's generally thought to have looked similar to the modern great white. However, while a great white shark can grow up to be 20 feet long and over 7,000 pounds, Megalodon was estimated to be 60 feet in length, weighing anywhere from 50 to 100 tons. Megalodon only died off about 2.6 million years ago. This means that he often interacted with animals that are still around today, like giant sea turtles, porpoises, and even whales. If these guys were still around, it would just be one more reason to stay out of the ocean. Number 5. Gorgonops. Before dinosaurs came along, the planet was still full of giant, horrifying monsters. A prime example is Gorgonops, an animal that lived 260 million years ago, way before the dinosaurs became the dominant predators. At around 6 to 10 feet in length, Gorgonops was such a fast and vicious predator that it quickly rose to the top of the food chain. Of course, it also helped that Gorgonops had massive canines so large they nearly protruded beyond its lower jaw. Number 4. Terror birds. These birds were the top predators in South America and parts of North America during the Miocene, Pliocene, and early Pleistocene periods before they were replaced by big cats and other carnivorous mammals. Unlike Quetzalcoatlus, they were unable to fly, but could run very fast, some speculate as fast as a cheetah, and of course they were very large, with the largest of the species growing up to 3 meters tall and weighing up to half a ton. Their main weapon was their head, which could grow up to a meter long, allowing them to swallow prey as large as a dog in one single gulp. However, thanks to the hooked tip of the bill, which was used as a weapon, the terror birds could kill and devour prey much larger than a dog, including horses, camels, and humans, if they were around at the time. Number 3. Titanoboa. Being the largest snake to ever exist, Titanoboa grew upwards of 15 meters long and weighed over a ton. It lived in the warm climates of the tropics 60 million years ago. It killed its prey by squashing it like the modern boa constrictor, and there's pretty much nothing that thing couldn't squeeze like a tube of toothpaste. Meaning, this thing would eat you like a boa constrictor would eat a guinea pig, which is why you should be happy it's extinct. Number 2. Arthropleura. If you've ever seen a centipede or millipede crawling through your backyard and you thought that was a whole lot of nope, or perhaps seen or heard of the giant centipede and thought those things were horrifying, then you might not want to know about the Arthropleura, which were massive millipedes that could grow up to 3 meters long. These things had few, if any, predators, and it's not actually known whether they themselves were predators or not, but either way, odds are you would not want to run into one of these things. And number 1, Mosasaurus. Fossil evidence suggests that Mosasaurus could reach as much as 50 feet in length, making it one of the largest marine predators of Earth's history. Mosasaurus's head was like that of a crocodile, lined with hundreds of razor-sharp teeth which could kill even the most well-armored enemies. Almost 3 times the size of the Leoplerodon, which was perhaps the next most ferocious sea predator, the Mosasaurus would be capable of eating a small boat in one bite today. This happened about 7 years ago, ironically on Halloween night. It was pretty late, close to midnight, so all the kids in the neighborhood had already gone home. Even our neighbors across the way had stopped playing their corny Halloween tape. You know, the ones with the creaking door sounds and witch cackling. It was just me and my cousin Q sitting in the living room. Now, my other cousin, who was about 4 years old, had left her doll laying on the floor face down. It was one of those baby alive dolls or something like that, the ones with the moving eyelids. Q had issues with that doll the moment it was bought. She hated it and said it was creepy. In fact, she often threw it down the basement stairs. I had no problems with it, and so it stayed on the floor so my little cousin could pick it up in the morning. It was very quiet for about half an hour, until I heard a loud, rasping, shuffling noise that seemed to be coming from outside. It sounded like an older man right outside our window. I turned to Q, who looked back at me. "Did you hear that?" "It's probably the neighbor's tape again," she said. She went back to typing on her computer. It was silent for another minute before we heard the rasping noise again, louder this time. It sounded like the man was trying to say something. I got up from the couch and peeked out the window. Absolutely no one out there, not even in the street. Our neighbor's house was dark. It was as still as any night in our quiet neighborhood. "There's no one out there," I said, looking back to Q. She didn't say anything. I was kind of getting freaked out. Another minute passed, and this time there was whispering, but loud whispering. I remember it sounded like a kid and a woman. Q finally looked up from her computer. "It's that doll," she said. Of course she thought it was. She was very superstitious. I gave her a skeptic look. Let me say this, I don't believe in the paranormal. I leant down and picked up the doll. It was fine. Her eyes were closed. I forgot to say that it had a voice box thing in it, but it didn't have any batteries. I put it back down. "No, it's not. Just leave it alone," I told her. It was silent again. I went back to my seat on the couch. The rasping started again, and I heard the man say something garbled, followed by wheezing. I jumped up from the couch. I was going to see if it was coming from the backyard. Just as I started walking, I noticed that the doll had moved a little. I picked it up again and turned it over. Its eyes were open, and it was heavier than before. I dropped it, and Q threw it down the basement again. I still have no idea what to think. Q denies it ever happened, and my little cousin never asked about her doll after that. I saw the doll only one time after that, on the top basement step laying on its side. This time, I pushed it down the steps. I was up late reading on a cold night. My bedroom is on the first floor, and I live alone in a relatively quiet and wooded area. For that reason, a lot of my windows didn't have any blinds, since it wasn't as if people driving by were able to look into my house. Plus, I like waking up to the sunlight shining in my bedroom. But this one night made me regret never getting blinds in the bedroom. After finally shutting my reading lamp to get some shut-eye, I had a good 2 minutes of silence before I heard the sound of something hitting the window. It sounded like a single tap from a person's fist. I was facing away from the window and didn't want to turn around. I was used to hearing things like tree branches brush up against the walls and windows, but I distinctly recognized this sound to be a fist hitting glass. The thought that somebody might be outside my window watching me frightened me. The fact that somebody would walk all the way onto my property to my bedroom window. I tried to accept that maybe it was just a tree branch, but a second and single knock at the window confirms my fear. It was a fist hitting the glass, and somebody was outside my window. I figured that if I just ignored it, they would go away. Maybe it was just some punk trying to mess with me. If they thought I was sleeping, they would get bored. Another knock at the window came, and I desperately tried to just stay still and show no reactions. But when the fourth knock came routinely, I decided enough was enough. I should confront this jerk like a real man. I turned to the window, and just barely caught a glimpse of a black shadow quickly moving under the window. For some reason, actually seeing something at the window killed any courage I had, and I ran to the kitchen phone and called the police. They said they would have an officer over in 10 minutes. When I hung up, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I turned my head and saw somebody standing outside my kitchen window, surely looking at me. Only for a second though, because as soon as I noticed, he took off. Somebody was watching me through all the windows. Then I received a disturbing phone call. It was my neighbor, who also happens to be my best friend. He happened to notice through his window that 3 people dressed in black walked onto my property earlier, one of them with a sharp, shiny object in his hand. This only made me panic even more. I ran upstairs where I knew I couldn't be watched and hid in the bathroom. I heard constant single knocks at the front door downstairs. I just prayed they would get there in time, and thankfully, moments after the knocking stopped, I heard heavy banging at the front door, followed by someone screaming police. It turned out to be the cops, but whoever the 3 men were already gone into the woods. It might have been more than 3, I don't even know. All I know is they were never caught, and that I went out to get blinds the same week. My parents are divorced, and I was living with my dad. I'm an only child, so there were times when kids might be dangerous when I was out making friends with the kids on the block. There was this one kid who lived on the corner. His name was Tom. So I did. He was a lot older than me. I was 12 and he was 16. I found out after hanging out with him a lot that he was an only child as well, and that he also lived with his dad. At first, I found him very relatable. I gave him my phone number and he would call to hang out. Sometimes he would come over and play video games. But then he started getting weird. He would call non-stop. If I didn't answer, he would begin to leave annoyed messages. He would call 5 or 6 times before coming over and ringing the bell. If my dad wasn't home, I usually didn't answer it, but when he was home, he would force me to hang out with Tom, even though I told him he was creepy. I biked with Tom back down to his house while pretending to listen to him babble on about stupid shit. This kid would never shut up. I needed to find a way to get him to stop looking for me. Then, for the first time, he invited me into his house. I really didn't want to go in, but it didn't seem I had a choice. The second I walked into the door, the foul, disgusting odor of his house filled my lungs. Clothes were tossed all over the floor, broken glass in one corner of the room, and what looked like coffee stains on the wall. It was the most disgusting place I'd ever seen. And then, a huge, shady-looking man walked out from another room. He looked at me with a very intimidating look. I felt myself backing up away from him, until Tom introduced him as his father. The man just gave me a big grunt and stomped off into another room. It was official, this kid was a fucking creep. I needed to get away from him for good. I decided I didn't even want to be in that house anymore and just made up some excuse to go. I think that I said that I forgot I had a doctor's appointment, and at that moment, his smile slowly faded as an unhappy, if not extremely angry expression crossed his face. He didn't even give me any response. He just looked at me with this unnerving stare. I left in a hurry and ran back down the block to my house. The door was locked, surprisingly. I unlocked it with the key my dad made me carry and found that he wasn't home. I really wanted him to be home. And then I found a little sticky note on the fridge saying he was called into work for a possible storm emergency. So that night before going to sleep, I checked my email for a response from somebody on eBay. But instead, I had about 5 new emails all titled in capital letters, and they were all sent from an email named tomtom20@aol.com. It was him. I never gave him my email and still have no idea how he got it. One of the emails was titled, "You made a mistake." Another was titled, "I know where you live." And the rest were filled with profanity and threats. I was only 12 and was extremely intimidated by this, so I was ready to call my dad, but as soon as I was heading to the kitchen phone, I heard the sound of rustling bushes outside. I opened the blinds of the window that was facing the bushes, and was greeted by the face of a huge man who I instantly recognized as my brother. situation, we went on to get a restraining order as soon as possible. Tom and his dad moved out about a month after that. I moved into a house that my aunt and uncle had been renting out for several years after they built a new place. I spent a few months alone before a buddy from work asked if I was looking for a roommate. I thought about it for a few days and ended up allowing him to move in. It was a 2-bedroom place with a den and office in the garage. He decided he wanted his own space, as the bedrooms were right next to each other, so he moved his stuff into the office in the garage. And I have to admit, it was a pretty cool setup he had. The only problem, he didn't have a bathroom or kitchen out there, so he would use the kitchen and toilet in the house. We worked different schedules, so I would often leave the house unlocked for him. One night, I went to my girlfriend's house for dinner. After I got back, I decided to grab a 6-pack of beer I had bought the previous night. When I opened the fridge, my beer was gone. I assumed it was my roommate and went into a blind rage. I stormed out into the garage and slammed his bedroom door open. He was sleeping and rolled over. I screamed at him, asking why he drank my beer without asking. He said he didn't touch my beer and rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Having lived with him for a while, I was pretty good at judging when he was lying. I felt he was telling the truth. My heart sank as I came to the realization that somebody had stolen our beer from the fridge and whatever else. We went back into the house and made sure everything was in its place. The TV was there, all the furniture. It wasn't until I went into my bedroom and realized my $2,000 laptop was gone that we began to panic. My buddy called the cops and we searched high and low for the beer and laptop, thinking I might have misplaced them. We soon gave up and began to search the yard for whoever had done this. We didn't live alone in this house though. There was a room that had been built on several years after the house was built. My aunt's dying mother spent her last couple of years living there, as it was easy for my aunt and uncle to care for her during her sickness. When she died, they began to rent the room out to a strange woman, before eventually moving out themselves and renting the rest of the house out. The woman remained there until we moved in, and my aunt and uncle had their concerns with her. They believed she was a drug addict, which became evident to us during our stay there. She behaved erratically, and we would hear strange noises from her end of the house all hours of the night. Her brother moved in several months after we did, which was strange because her place was a 1-bedroom suite. We figured he just slept on the couch or something. He was even weirder than her though. He wouldn't acknowledge me when I pulled up into the driveway while he was sitting having a smoke. Trying to make conversation with the guy was pointless. He basically just stared through your soul. One night he even asked my roommate if he could score him drugs. That night during our search for the burglar, we went out to the garage door, only to find bare footprints in the snow. The footprints led from their suite door to our garage door. We put 2 and 2 together and began banging on their door. We said we knew it was him and he'd better answer the door. Someone inside lifted the curtain and made eye contact with me, which to this day still gives me chills. The cops showed up and took down all our information. They scoured the house and found nothing and no one. We showed them the footprints and explained that the people living in the suite were drug addicts. We gave the officers their names. They ran their names in their cruiser and came back to inform us that the man had a warrant in another province and was convicted of breaking and entering several years back. The cops knocked on their door for several minutes and identified themselves as police officers to no avail. They informed us that because the warrant was from out of province, and technically the man hadn't committed a crime, there was nothing they could do about it. The cops left and it was 1 a.m., so my roommate and I went to bed. The door that connects the 2 weirdos' suite and my part of the house can only be locked from their side of the door. I completely forgot about this before falling asleep. During the night, I heard footsteps outside my door and a few loud bangs. My doorknob began to shake violently. I was barely awake and brushed it off as my roommate. Luckily, I always lock my bedroom door at night. The next morning, I asked my roommate what was so important at 3 a.m. that he would need to try and get in my room. He told me he slept through the night and hadn't even got up to go to the bathroom. My heart sank. I told him what had happened during the night. I have never been more glad that I locked my door at night, due to some silly childhood fear that I've held onto into adulthood. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I left my bedroom door open and that man got into my room. Needless to say, me and my buddy moved out of that place a few weeks later. It happened on my friend's 21st birthday. We were throwing him a big party filled with alcohol. There were a lot of people I didn't know there. It was just chaotic in the house. There were probably 100 people. But even in all the chaos, I noticed one shady character that stood out. There was an older man sitting in the corner of the room, just kind of watching everybody drinking and dancing. I didn't think much about it at first, assuming it was someone's dad or uncle or something. But as the night died down, and more than half of the guests had already left, the man was still there, by himself in the corner. At that point, I asked one of my friends who that guy was, and he said he had no idea. We decided to wait until most of the guests had left, figuring maybe he would too. And when the last of the guests were gone, we went back into the living room, and surely enough, he was gone. I felt relieved immediately, even though it wasn't even my house. That man just seemed so out of place, and it was downright creepy. Me and a couple of other friends slept over that night. I slept on the couch in the den. Falling asleep was easy with all the alcohol running through my veins, but staying asleep was a problem. I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling insanely thirsty and having to go to the bathroom. I first went to the bathroom since it was closer, and then went up to the kitchen and got a glass of water. When I went back down to the den and laid back down on the couch, I noticed that the sliding door to the coat closet across from the couch had been slightly slid open. It was too dark to see anything else though, like anything inside of it. I felt a chill run down my spine as I remembered the creepy man sitting in the corner. The idea of that man hiding in the closet immediately popped into mind. I continued to lay still, under the assumption that he was watching me through the open door of the closet. I began to plan my escape. I could jump over the other couch and land right next to the stairway upstairs to the living room, but I just had to gather up the courage to do it. Then I saw the closet door slide open a little more, and that's when I got the courage to run for it. I jumped over the couch and ran up the stairs. I could hear the closet door fully slide open and somebody running after me. I screamed at my friends who were on the couches to wake up. All three of my friends that were in the living room woke up and looked at me as if I were crazy. I knew that we now outnumbered him 4-1, so I looked at the stairs and waited, but he never came up. My friends demanded an explanation, so I told them that the creepy man from earlier was hiding in the coat closet, and he almost chased me up the stairs. Just then, we heard the back door from down in the den open up, and we all looked at each other. We called the cops, but the man was never found. He simply left through the back door. When I was going to college in North Carolina, I started working at a local TJ Maxx store for some extra cash. Since I was in class during the day, I usually worked the later shifts. One night I was walking to my car. I think it was about 11 or 11:30. As a safety protocol, all of the employees left together and the security guard would watch from the sidewalk to make sure we all got to our cars all right. I was approaching my car when I heard a car pull up behind me. I turned around and there was a woman with her teenage daughter in the passenger seat. She rolled the window down and started giving me a story about how they just came into town to visit family and that they're out of gas and have no money, and then asked if they could borrow a few dollars. I told them the truth, which was that I had no cash on me. I never carry cash. So she just looked at me and asked very hurriedly if I would get into the car with them, go to the gas station, and buy them about $10 worth of gas. I mean, obviously I said no, and she asked a few more times. It wasn't until I had said no that I noticed the daughter in the passenger seat had been staring at me the whole time, and she was licking her lips and wringing her fingers. At that point, I bolted back to the store where the security guard was, because they had pulled up behind my car, so I would have been stuck there. I told him what had happened. He started walking to their car, and they sped away. Working the night shift always sucked. I work in an office building and would constantly do the night shifts since it was the only time it would work out for me. I was just about always the only person on the floor I worked on, possibly in the whole building. There would always be a kind of eerie feeling to being in such a big building with most of the lights out and absolutely no one around. But on the upside, it was peaceful and less stressful, and I was able to get a lot of work done. There was this one night though. It was a Friday night, around 2 in the morning. I was typing away on my keyboard when I heard a noise from outside my cubicle. It sounded like just a random crack from the walls or something. It's unusual in this building, but I didn't get too concerned about it. I resumed typing away and was once again interrupted by a sound. This time, the sound of a computer starting up. It caught me off guard. I was sure nobody else was working the night shift. I stood up on my chair to get a view over the cubicle walls. The glare of a computer screen in the dark was visible in a cubicle on the opposite side of the room. Then I did something stupid, something I regret. I asked if there was anybody there in a yell, hoping to get an answer from a fellow employee. But instead, I saw the glaring light of the computer monitor across the room turn off, and there was once again nothing but darkness on that side of the room. I started getting nervous. I turned off the lamp and computer screen so that I wouldn't give away my position to whoever that was. I crouched down and tiptoed out across to a nearby cubicle. There was just utter silence. I sat waiting for something to happen for God knows how long, but I eventually decided the coast was clear. I tiptoed down past all the cubicles until I reached the opening near the exit door to the stairs and elevators, and that's when I realized that my fearful suspicion was true. There was a man crouched down behind a plant in the corner of the room, dressed in all black. I felt my heart sink as I noticed him, but it didn't seem like he knew that I noticed him. I turned back to the stairway door. There was no way I was going to wait for the elevator and take a chance. I casually opened the door and closed it behind me, proceeding to walk down the stairs. After making it down about 2 flights of stairs, I heard the door above me push open aggressively, followed by manic echoing footsteps coming fast down the stairs. I raced down the stairs, running as fast as I could, all while the footsteps above me were getting louder. I finally made it to the first floor, raced through the lobby, and out the front door. Whoever was in there didn't follow me. I immediately called the cops, along with one of my bosses. My boss said no one was scheduled to work except for me. The cops scanned the place from top to bottom. There was no one in there. I couldn't help them out with any description other than he was wearing all black. I did continue to do the night shift for about a week after that, with my boss allowing me to lock all possible entrances to the floor, including the elevators. But I still wasn't comfortable with it, so ever since, I've been doing the day shifts. It was 4 a.m. on a Saturday night. I woke up to my stomach rumbling, and nothing is worse than trying to sleep on an empty stomach. So I got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen to make a sandwich. But immediately I noticed that the cabinet was open. I'm always super obsessive over closing everything I open, so I couldn't believe that I had done that. I found it more odd than most people would. That's just how I am. Most people would shut the cabinet and forget about it, but I went as far as investigating around the house for any unwanted guests. There was nobody in any of the closets I checked, but when I went down to the den, the back door was wide open. I was certain now that someone had been in my house. I somehow had the balls to step outside and turn on the patio light, and there was somebody sitting in one of the patio chairs. He looked at me with a blank expression and got up slowly. He looked filthy, almost homeless. His hair was down to his shoulders. He started walking closer to me. I couldn't tell what his intentions were, and I kinda just stood there, almost taking him as harmless. But he suddenly lunged at me, and I barely had time to shut the door and lock it. We stared each other down for 10 seconds through the glass, until I finally realized I should be taking that time to call the cops. I ran to the kitchen to get the phone, and as I was dialing, I noticed when I got back that he was already gone. I still called the cops, but nothing was ever found of the man. This is a very weird story that took place a few months ago. I still live in the same house this happened in. I have an electrical outlet under my bed that I use to charge my phone with. I leave my phone up on the ledge above my bed every night, usually using it as an alarm. However, something strange started happening on a Monday night in February. I woke up to my alarm clock blasting. Only it was still dark out. I looked at my actual alarm clock sitting on my desk. It was 4 in the morning. I wasn't sure if I'd accidentally set a new alarm. The alarm was titled Down. I unset it and went back to sleep, not overthinking it. The next night, I woke up again to the sound of my phone's alarm clock blasting. I saw that the time was 3 in the morning, and the alarm clock title was set to Beneath. No way had I set that alarm. I would remember something like that. I figured my brother was playing a joke on me somehow. The next morning, I told my dad to tell him to stop messing with my alarm clock, that it's interrupting my actual sleep on school nights. But he swore on his life that he had never touched it, and I kinda believed him. That night, I put a password on my phone and wrote it on a sticky note just for safekeeping. I hid the sticky note on the wall behind my bed and made sure no extra alarms were set. The only one was set for 8 a.m. I fell asleep, but once again, I woke up to the blasting alarm clock in total darkness. 2 a.m. The alarm was titled The. I was a little freaked out now. Something was really wrong with my phone. I was sure someone was hacking into it. The next day I left it off for the whole day in hopes that whoever was messing with it would forget about it. And that night I used my actual alarm clock on my desk as an alarm instead. I set it to 8 a.m. and went to sleep, but when I woke up, there was once again no sunlight. My alarm clock was off, so I couldn't see the time. It was my phone. It had been moved to the ledge. But the alarm clock sound wasn't the usual marimba. It was some kind of distorted screaming sound. I turned off the alarm, which was titled Bed. It was 1 in the morning. I was laying there clueless, not knowing what to think. My phone was at 10%, so I reached down under my bed to try and find the charger that's normally plugged into the wall. It was missing. And then, at the worst possible time, I realized exactly what it all meant. The 4 alarm titles formed a sentence. Down beneath the bed. I tried to pull my arm away, but it was too late. I felt a hand grab my arm and squeeze tight. I screamed as loud as I could, loud enough for all the neighbors to hear. I heard my parents' bedroom door open and footsteps running over to my room. My door opened and my dad barged in with a baseball bat. He saw that I was being pulled down to the edge of my bed. My dad reached under my bed and grabbed a hold of the man hiding under. He knocked him out with the bat and called the cops. The man clearly didn't plan that out, as he basically trapped himself under my bed. Police told us that he was a registered sex offender who had been arrested 10 times. He's extremely messed up in the head and clearly gains pleasure from messing with and scaring his victims. It scares me the most that he was in our house and under my bed for 4 days. The most horrifying experience that ever happened to me didn't even directly happen to me. I have a friend that I'll call Ty. We would hang out or at least text every day, but there was this one day that he didn't respond to any of my texts or calls. I went over to his house, which was a block away, to see if he was alright. I knocked and rang, but he didn't answer, which was weird because his car was there. I got the feeling he wanted to be left alone. But late that night, I got a FaceTime request from an unknown number. I cautiously answered it with the camera aimed away from my face. A face popped up on the screen, and it was Ty. I felt so relieved and showed my face. When I got a little better look at his face, I noticed he looked different. Like, a lot more tired and, I don't know, paranoid, I guess. And he was also in an unfamiliar room. I asked him where he was and why he wasn't answering, to which he responded that he was fine and he was at home. I asked him whose phone he was using, and he just took a long pause before answering. He just blankly stared at the camera until finally answering that he was using his uncle's phone. That was really weird, but before I could question him further, he all of a sudden demands that I lend him $10,000 and that he'll pay me back. I can't help but laugh at this until I see that he's serious. More than just serious. His facial expression filled with what looked like worry. I asked him why the hell he needed so much money, and there was once again a huge pause, with him just staring into the camera. He finally says he has to go, and with that, the call ended. It was probably one of the weirdest and most unnerving experiences of my life. I had never seen him act so weird. Something was clearly wrong with him. But it was late, and I figured I would just go over to his house tomorrow and talk with him. The next day, first thing in the morning, I went straight over to his house and rang the doorbell about 10 times. He didn't answer. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause. If he wanted to act sketchy, that was his problem. But late that night, around the same time, I received another FaceTime call from another unknown number. I answered it, and it was again Ty, but this time, he looked like shit. His hair was a mess. He had a cut on his forehead. He had bags under his eyes. I didn't understand what the hell was wrong with him. He wouldn't tell me anything. He just kept demanding $10,000 to be paid to some random address, to which I kept telling him no. And then he said something that still haunts me. He said in a shaky, nervous voice, "Come on, don't point a gun at my back." It hit me like a bullet as he said this, accompanied with an ever so slightly twitch of his left eye, to which I interpreted as a wink. But then the call ended abruptly, and I can only imagine what was going to happen to him. By some miracle, I remembered the address and sent the cops there right away. It was an old abandoned house on a basically deserted block miles away from my house. They found Ty in the basement, beaten senseless and barely alive, but they got to him just in time. The sicko that did this to him was already long gone. Ty doesn't like to talk about it, but the most he told me was that he was walking home before everything went black, and he woke up in a dark basement.
Anyone who's watched a horror movie knows one thing. The characters make horrible decisions, but if they made good decisions, odds are we wouldn't have the movie. So here are some horrible decisions made by characters in horror movies, and I hope it goes without warning that there are spoilers ahead. Number 10. Jeepers Creepers checking the pipe. After practically being chased by a terrifying lunatic truck driver in the middle of literal nowhere, our main protagonists, Dari and Trish, spot the shady, sinister-looking character who was driving the truck, depositing what looks like a rolled-up corpse into a pipe at the side of the road. The shady-looking character then quite obviously stares down the two as they drive by, knowing that they witnessed what he had just done. Having to now dispose of the witnesses, the truck driver emerges once again, ramming Dari's car off the road before continuing on down the road. Now, a normal person would just get out of there and report the incident to the first cop they encounter. However, this wouldn't be a horror movie without a horrible idea. Dari decides to go back and check out what was dumped inside the pipe, instead of getting to the nearest phone and calling the police. He ends up falling inside the pipe after getting scared by a couple of rats, and ultimately becomes the creeper's next target. Number 9. Drag Me to Hell, not checking the envelope. At the end of Drag Me to Hell, after Christine had seemingly gotten rid of the cursed button that would send her to hell, Clay, her boyfriend, pulls out a familiar envelope containing none other than the cursed button. It turned out she had mistakenly gotten rid of Clay's envelope containing a quarter instead of the one containing the button. Had Christine simply made the right decision and checked the contents of the envelope first, she would have been freed from the eternal curse. Number 8. The ending of I Am Legend.
At the end of I Am Legend, Robert Neville decides to sacrifice himself by putting the antidote into Anna's hand and putting her and her son into a reinforced coal shed before pulling the pin off a grenade and blowing himself up along with the rampaging Darkseekers. What he could have done differently though was just lob the grenade at them and get into the shaft, since it can obviously fit another person, and it would only take 2 steps for Robert to get inside. Number 7. Helen's death. I know what you did last summer. While on the run for her life from a crazed hook-welding killer, Helen finds herself only a few feet away from freedom, where a marching band and onlookers are seen walking by, but Helen's pointless and foolish decision to turn around and look behind her at the last possible moment instead of running into the crowd of people is nothing short of moronic, and thus it leads to a death that could have been easily avoided. Number 6. The Hand Trap, Saw 2. Addison's death is one of the most easily avoided in the entire Saw series. Inside of a glass box with 2 holes in it is an antidote. If Addison were to walk to the other side of the box, she would have seen a lock with a key sticking out of it, which in turn would have unlocked the box and allowed her to access the antidote without harm. However, she makes the rash decision to put both of her hands inside of the holes, getting herself caught in the blades fitted in the holes. Number 5. Not closing the beach in Jaws. After hearing the news of a giant great white shark on the loose near the shore, Mayor Vaughn refuses to close the local beach and safeguard his citizens.
Look, we depend on the summer people here for our very lives.
You are not going to have a summer.
How much we're finished. We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark. I mean, we're going to have to tell the Coast Guard.
Mr.
We're
Vaughn,
going
you
to
have
have
to
to get shark
contact the
repellent.
shark
We're going to have to
research.
Deciding tourism income is more important than the actual safety of those tourists, Mayor Vaughn soon learns of the consequences for his greedy mistake. Number 4. The Purge, letting somebody into the house and leaving the safe room. There were so many horrible decisions made in this movie that it would be hard not to include more than one. Firstly, one of, if not the biggest one, was when the son, Charlie, decided to disarm the house security system to allow a stranger into his home on the night of the Purge, when any stranger can rob you, hurt you, or kill you and your entire family and get away with it. Not to mention, this man is also being chased by purgers.
Somebody please, open the door. They're coming, Kitty. Somebody please, they're gonna kill me.
This idiotic decision is of course what led to everything afterward in the movie, including the death of Charlie's own father. Another ridiculous decision in the movie was the choice of the entire family to leave the safe room while their house is under attack. When a load of maniacs are set to break into your house baying for blood, and you have a perfectly good safe room and a bunch of guns at hand, surely it makes sense to hold up there and blast away whoever so much as breathes near the door. But that would be too logical for a horror movie. So the family splits up, making themselves easier to pick off one by one. Number 3. Halloween Resurrection, trying to unmask Michael Myers. In the beginning of the 8th installment of the franchise, Laurie Strode finally captures Michael Myers. As she gets ready to cut the rope that he's dangling on and end her nightmare forever, she decides to unmask him and see if it's really her brother. She fails to realize that even though he's hanging upside down, his hands are still free. Number 2. Scream, Tatum's death. When the Ghostface killer traps Tatum in the garage, she actually manages to put up a good fight for a bit, getting the killer on the ground several times. However, instead of kicking the killer while he's down or looking for something to use as a weapon in the garage, she decides to crawl out a pet door, which is clearly too small for her to fit into. And number 1, saw the foot amputation. After being unable to reach the phone with his arm, Dr. Gordon decided his only choice was to sever his foot, or he could have used the saw to grab it. This happened to my dad when he was a little kid. I think it messed him up a bit emotionally, but he never admitted it. This story freaks me out just imagining it. So I'm pretty sure my dad was 10 years old, and he was home alone for whatever reason. He was watching TV in the living room. It was the only TV in the house, and all of a sudden, the TV just shut off. So he got up and turned it back on. It was an old shitty TV, so it wasn't weird at all. When he got back on his couch, it happened again. He got up once again and turned the TV back on, and again it turned off. He repeated this process a couple more times before he started to look for the remote. While looking for the remote, he walked over to check behind one of the couches and saw a man hiding in the corner, holding the TV remote. My dad described the man as having long, messy hair and a crazed look in his eyes. He gave my dad a smile, and my dad ran out the front door screaming like a little girl. He went to his neighbors, who called the police. The man was still in the house when the police got there, so he was arrested. My dad told me that he still assumes the man was either homeless or crazy. Either way, this story is downright terrifying. My friend told me about something that happened to her when she was younger, about 8 or 9. She was walking home from school and got her key out to let herself into the house. Her single mom worked and came home later on weekdays. As she reached up to put the key in the door, her mom opened it in a dressing gown, having left work sick. Instead of greeting her, she looked straight past my friend and immediately said, "Who are you?" My friend turned around, and a man in a long coat hurried back down the path and down the street. Being ill that day had possibly saved her daughter from something potentially horrible happening to her. Before I start this story, I want to note that Jacob's mother is a drug addict, and his father really didn't have much wrong with him outside of being with his mother. So one night, when Jacob and his father were asleep, they heard a series of loud banging, scratching, and moving noises coming from the mother's room. Jacob's father jumped out of the bed and ran down the hall and started slamming on the door. His mother opened it, yelling at him to quiet down and that he woke her up. He asked her about the sounds. She hadn't been awake to hear them. Jacob's dad would have assumed that she was on something again, but something was wrong. The window was open all the way, and the TV was moved across the room, still plugged in, and had the screen facing outside. Jacob's dad was reasonably scared. He shut the window, got his bat, locked the mother's room from the outside, and made her sleep in the living room. He stayed up most of the night. He woke up Jacob at 5. It was still dark out. Jacob went out to the kitchen where his mother already was. A couple minutes later, his dad walked in, wide-eyed. He pointed at Jacob and his mother and held his finger to his lips. They both quieted down. They heard something shuffling around on the roof, going from edge to edge. Jacob's dad had the bat. They sat together in the room, quietly. Minutes later, the sound went away. Jacob's grandmother was called. She was asked if everybody could stay over there for a little while. She said yes and told them she'd come pick them up. Jacob finished eating and went to go sit on the couch. There was no TV in that room, so he sat in silence. He looked over at a door to an empty room in the hallway. The door was open. There was a finger wrapped around the side of it. Jacob screamed and pointed to it, and his father grabbed him and ran out. Jacob's mother followed behind. They went to a gas station and sat out front until they saw Jacob's grandmother's truck. Jacob described how unnatural the finger looked to me. He said it reminded him a little bit of a foam finger in length and width. It was wrapped clear around the door frame, the door itself being latched on the opposite side. They didn't go back to that house much after that. Once they'd gotten everything out of it, they never went back again. Nothing was stolen, and the window in the empty room was open. I was 13 years old. I had the most isolated bedroom imaginable. Mix that with a wild imagination, and I was often up late at night, scared and paranoid, unable to fall asleep. My bedroom was a separate floor of the house, on the opposite side of my parents' room. They had no way of hearing what was going on in my room. So it was a seemingly ordinary night, with a bit of rain, but not a storm. I woke up and looked at my clock, and saw that it was 2 a.m. I got an uncomfortable feeling right away, but I didn't know why. I then saw at the edge of my bed, there was a shadow of something roundish just over the head of the edge of my bed. My heart started racing until I realized it was just my hat. I sometimes hung my hat on one of the wooden poles at the edge of my bed, so I calmed myself down and fell back asleep. I woke up again around half an hour later and was again startled by the sight of the shadow at the end of my bed. But after my brain started to fully wake up, I remembered it was just my hat again. This process happened one more time that night, probably another half hour later, and once again, I was startled by the sight of the shadow. I was getting thirsty, so I reached my hand down to the side of my bed, looking for my water bottle, but I instead found something else. My hat. And at that instant, I felt my heart drop into my stomach, as I almost fell out of my bed trying to turn the lamp on. The light revealed the face of a man, peering over the edge of my bed, staring right into my eyes. I let out the highest pitched scream a boy could possibly produce, and ran straight past the man and down the stairs of my room. I felt the man try to grab me, but I managed to open the door and run to my parents' room to get my dad. My dad got the baton from under his bed and raced to my room, but he was too late. When we got back to my room, the window was wide open. Apparently the man jumped out onto the patio roof outside my window. When I was a kid, I had a huge group of friends that all happened to be on my block. On the weekend nights, we would always play manhunt, aka hide and go seek for older people. It worked out great because since we were all neighbors, we used all the front and backyards and even the woods behind our houses. We had a rule though, that we couldn't go out more than a backyard's length into the woods. I always used the same hiding spot, and nobody ever found me. I always hid behind an old rusty barrel that was thrown into the woods years ago. So on this particular night, there were only 6 of us playing. My friends Joe and Raj were on my team. We quickly dispersed as we were the first to hide. I ran to my usual hiding spot, through my backyard into the woods behind the barrel. Usually I would see the flashlights of the other team shining through the backyards in the woods, but it was unusually quiet this time. And then, I finally heard footsteps nearby. I didn't see a flashlight, so I assumed it was one of my teammates. I whispered Joe and Raj's names, but then whoever it was started charging at me, full on sprinting. I immediately shot up and ran out of the woods to find a new hiding spot in my backyard, but nobody ever came out of the woods. I heard all my friends calling my name from out front, including Joe and Raj, so I assumed something was wrong and went up front. I saw Joe's parents talking with my parents, with all my friends surrounding. My parents seemed a bit relieved to see me, so I was naturally really confused. They told me that a police officer had just passed by and warned them about a serial rapist spotted in the area and that all the kids should stay indoors. I explained what happened to me in the woods, and my parents started freaking out, making 100% sure that I wasn't lying. They called the police. I really don't know if he was ever caught, but I really hope he was. I try not to think about what would have happened to me had whoever that was caught me. When I was maybe 12 or 13, me, my mom, my stepdad, and 2 dogs went to the beach for a weekend. We rented an apartment all the way at the back of the shore. The apartment had nothing surreal to it at first sight. We unpacked everything and went out for dinner straight afterwards. We came back and at the time it was maybe 9 p.m. We watched some TV for an hour or so. My mom, stepdad, and 2 dogs slept on a bed you could make from the couch. They gave me the bedroom with a king-sized bed. I went to bed and used my computer for a while to play some games that I had pre-installed since I knew that there would be no internet connection there. I stayed up playing games pretty late at night. I decided it was time to get some shut-eye and go to sleep. Maybe after 5 minutes of laying in my bed, complete silence filled the room. But then, all of a sudden, I hear this extremely loud sigh. I knew it wasn't my parents or the dogs, considering the door to the living room was closed. I straight bolted from that room and went to sleep in the bedroom opposite of the master bedroom. My heart was pounding so fast because I was absolutely petrified. Needless to say, no sleep was had that night. I told my parents about it the next morning and they told me it was probably just my imagination, but I was certain it was not. This story still gives me nightmares to this day. I was staying with one of my best friends in North Carolina where I had a job interview. I was coming from New Jersey and my friend Mike offered to let me crash at his place for a few days. He didn't necessarily live too close to the company I was interviewing for, about 2 hours away, but I also just wanted to see one of my good friends again. So this happened after the second interview. I came back to Mike's place in a good mood as I had been offered the job on the spot. We celebrated in the yard that night with a few friends and a few beers, or a lot of beers. We stayed up late and basically got shit-faced. People were coming and going all night. That's the kind of person Mike is. He didn't really keep track of who entered and left his house. So at about 4 in the morning, after everyone had left, we called it a night. I struggled to make it up the stairs and to the bathroom. I drained the snake and soaked my face with hot water, and it was at that moment that I thought I could see something in the corner of my eye. I turned to the half-open door and saw an eye poking in at me through the crack of the door. I let out a loud "holy shit," and in my drunken klutzy state, I fell to the floor. When I got back on my feet, the eye was gone. I stumbled out of the bathroom and called Mike's name. I heard him call out in response from downstairs in the kitchen. It couldn't have possibly been him. I didn't hear anyone go down the stairs, but I asked if he was up there anyway. Expectedly, he replied with a no. I can't remember fully, but I assume I just brushed it off under the assumption that I had too much to drink. I made it to the guest bedroom and basically fell onto the bed, barely managing to throw the covers over myself. You know when you're drunk you fall asleep easier. That's an understatement. I think I fell asleep seconds after falling onto that bed, only to wake up after an unknown duration of sleep. I immediately felt the unbearable headache coming on, and began to rub my head. It was probably a little before sunrise. The room was a bit chilly. My foot was sticking out of the covers, hanging over the edge of the bed. And then it happened. I felt something extremely cold grab onto my foot and start stroking it. I then heard a raspy voice whisper the words, "Can you help me?" I sat up and screamed at the top of my lungs before sprinting out of the bed and out of the room, meeting Mike at the top of the stairs. I called the police and they arrived shortly. The intruder was actually a woman in her late 40s who clearly suffered from some kind of addiction. She admitted to simply walking right into Mike's house and hiding in a closet. The eye I saw was hers, peeking at me while in the bathroom. I always make sure to cover my feet with my sheets now. It was the dead of winter in Cali. Me and a couple buddies were on a skiing trip by South Lake Tahoe. We stayed in a big luxurious log cabin for a few nights. On the third night during a blizzard, I got up to get a glass of water late in the night. As I crossed the cabin over to the kitchen, there was a frantic knock at the door. I was a bit spooked that somebody would be knocking this late. I thought maybe I should just ignore it and let them go away. But I realized they knew we were there, as my car was parked right outside. I also had the thought that maybe somebody was in trouble and needed to get out of the dangerous weather. I tiptoed over to the door and waited for another knock. It didn't take too long before the knocking came again, this time much louder and more frantic. "Who is it?" I asked. Nobody answered. I asked again louder, but there was still no answer. After I asked this, there was no more knocking. I grew curious and eventually opened the door a crack with the chain lock still on just in case. Nobody was outside. I undid the lock and opened the door completely. There were footprints in the snow leading away from the cabin. For whatever stupid reason, maybe I felt some kind of guilt and worry for a person in need. I slipped on my boots and jacket and stepped out into the storm to follow the footsteps before they were completely filled. The footsteps led me to the edge of the property before completely stopping. I shit you not, the footprints completely ended, not a sign of vehicle marks, a struggle, nothing. It was as if whoever made the tracks was standing still, right where I was. I felt disturbed and ran back into the cabin and slammed the door shut behind me, making sure to lock it. Before I could even gather my thoughts, the frantic knocking at the door resumed. My heart started pounding, and I started to scream for my friends. One by one, they all rushed down to see what was wrong. When we opened the door, there was nobody there. The footprints were already filled. I never could prove what happened to my friends. I don't blame them for not believing me. I almost don't believe myself, but I know it happened. I just can't even try to explain it. It still freaks me out to this day. My friend and I were going to a party a few hours out of town, so we decided to stay at her family's holiday house about an hour south of the party. We arrived around mid-afternoon, and it was winter in a holiday town, so the area was completely empty, no other cars on the street. When we left for the party, I spent a moment deciding whether to pull the gate all the way closed. I'd had some trouble opening it earlier when we arrived, and if we were getting home late at night, I didn't want to be stuck outside. I ended up deciding to shut it for security. The party was great. We got back to the house around 12:30, and the gate was open. I immediately felt on edge because not only did I know that I had locked it, but I knew it couldn't just blow open in the wind. But I didn't want to make a big deal, so I was vague when my friend asked me if I'd shut it. We went inside and decided to make a snack. I was wandering through the house when suddenly my friend raced from the kitchen into the hallway and virtually tackled me to the ground. She was convinced she'd heard someone walking around outside. We tried to calm ourselves down, but we had no cell reception and there was no one else around. Over the next half hour or so, as we sat in the hallway paralyzed with fear, we heard footsteps outside and the back door being jimmied. We decided we had to leave, so we gathered everything up and got ready to make a break for the car. Just as we were at the front door ready to leave, there was a huge bang in the backyard, and suddenly what sounded like hundreds of birds started screaming. We legged it to the car, ended up starting it with all our stuff still on our laps. We hadn't bothered to even put in the back seat. As we reversed out the driveway, we saw somebody running up the side of the house towards us. We sped the entire way home, and didn't sleep at all that night. When I was 10, and my youngest brother Ben was only 1, there was this one weekend that my parents were painting our bedrooms, so we would have to sleep in the basement. There was a pull-out couch down there that turned into a bed, and Ben had an extra crib down there. I was only 10, so sleeping in a pitch-dark basement was very uncomfortable. Somehow, having Ben down there made me feel a bit safer though. He would wake me up in the middle of the night crying, and for some reason, tending to him made sleeping down there a little less scary. But there was this one time that I woke up to him screaming. Not crying, screaming, like no 1-year-old should. I was scared shitless immediately and ran over to him to see what was wrong. He was standing up looking at me, pointing to something. I looked in the direction he was pointing at. He was pointing into the pitch-dark boiler room right next to his crib. I felt like 1,000 knives just stabbed me in the chest, and even through the heat of the moment, I vaguely remember the faint sound of something falling over in the boiler room, and I felt as if I was being watched in that basement. I grabbed Ben and got the hell out of there as quickly as possible. I have never gone back down in that basement.
This video is going to be a little different from my others, in that I'm going to focus on one story instead of three. Now to begin, everyone knows what a crawl space is, whether you have one or you don't. An unoccupied narrow space within a home between the ground and the first floor, usually in place of a basement and used for storage. Usually the scariest things you'd find in a crawl space would be rodents or giant spider crickets jumping at you. But Jake Binger found something much more disturbing than any creepy creatures in his crawl space. In a nice area of Firestone, Colorado, Jake owns his own house where his girlfriend lives with him. Jake had met his girlfriend, who remains nameless, at a comedy club in town, and the two hit it off and would eventually start to date. At some point during this time, she opened up to him about her old abusive ex. She described her ex as a ticking time bomb, how he could at times be very sweet, and that she loved his more gentle side, but that he could switch to a completely different person just like a flick of a switch. And in this alternate personality of his, he was a very aggressive, scary man who would do things like fight bouncers at bars or punch holes in walls when angry, or even sometimes getting physical with her, and he got angry rather easily. Things would become so rocky between the two that eventually she would end things with her ex, but he didn't take that news well. She feared that her ex was stalking her parents' house at late hours of the night because either she or her parents would hear sounds from the backyard, like the gate slamming shut or the backyard shed door closing. Her ex disabled all forms of social media after the breakup, and she became so concerned for her well-being that she decided to move in with her current boyfriend, Jake. Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with anything? Well, on one regular night that Jake's girlfriend wasn't in the house with him, he was in his living room when he heard noises from in the crawl space. He moved from his living room to his kitchen and sat at the island for a while, continuing to listen and hearing strange occasional thumping sounds from directly below him. It was at this time that he started to record a video for his Snapchat story, assuming what he was hearing was an animal of some kind, such as a raccoon. As he enters his crawl space, he stops recording for a second so that he could take another video with the flash on so that he could navigate the crawl space. The crawl space appears to be mostly empty aside from some boxes that were tucked into one corner. Jake says when he saw these boxes this way, he was confused because he didn't remember leaving them that way. As Jake walks deeper into the crawlspace where the left side expands further down, Jake says he heard a noise in one corner, like pebbles being scraped on the concrete floor. As he heard the noise, he turned to the corner, where he saw the terrifying sight of a hunched-over man dressed in all black, who was hiding in the corner behind a wall, now getting up and approaching Jake. Jake's scream sounded like a legitimate scream from somebody witnessing something as disturbing as an intruder hiding in their crawlspace and then basically lunging at them. The video cuts out seconds later, as being that it was a Snapchat video. Once he let go of the record button, the video stopped. At this point, Jake explained that he ran back to the ladder of the crawlspace, and as he climbed up, the man grabbed his foot and tried to pull him down. But Jake managed to kick his way out of the grip and slam the crawlspace door in his face. Unfortunately, the door to the closet, which contained the crawlspace door, didn't have a lock, so Jake's first instinct was to run to the kitchen and grab the biggest knife, then lock himself inside the bathroom. He heard the closet door open and then footsteps come over to the bathroom door, and then the man on the other side of the door try the doorknob. Not knowing what kind of weapons the person might have had, Jake didn't engage the intruder in a fight. Instead, he silently called 911 and kept the line going, and eventually, he heard footsteps quickly leave the house out the front door. Now Jake told the 911 operator about the break-in, and so police came to the house, conducted a quick investigation, and a police report was created for the incident. Jake's girlfriend refused to come to the house after hearing of the incident, because she swore left and right that the man had to be her ex. It's impossible to make out any notable facial features on the man in the video. Jake says he saw that the man was wearing a black mask and his head was covered by a hood, which you can kind of see in the video. Jake also described the man to have a very tall-looking, intimidating stature, despite his hunched-over posture in the crawlspace. Jake's girlfriend's ex was a very tall man, and upon watching the video, she swears it looks just like his body. Of course, this is just speculation on her part, and without solid evidence, legally they don't have much of a leg to stand on as far as pressing charges. In the video though, loud thumping and hammering type sounds could be heard in the beginning. And after investigating, Jake found that the intruder had ripped through some of the insulation of the crawlspace and had been hammering at some of the wood in the ceiling of the crawlspace, and also some of the pipes. It's unknown why he was doing this. It was also discovered that the key that the couple hides in one of their sheds outside was missing, which already revealed how the intruder got inside, and might insinuate that the man who broke in had his eyes on the house for a while. Jake changed the locks on the door that same day, but his girlfriend has yet to return to that house, worried that it's now being stalked by her crazy ex-boyfriend. Jake has installed a Ring doorbell camera recently, and on several occasions, he's gotten a notification from his Alexa device that there's someone at his front door, but there's never anybody actually there. Not visibly, at least. While there isn't any solid evidence as to who the intruder was, it may be a strong possibility that it is in fact her ex-boyfriend. What started as a guy simply trying to get a funny Snapchat story of what he assumed to be a raccoon in his crawlspace turned into something much more horrifying, the start of a nightmare even. Jake said he would keep me updated on the matter, so if any new information comes up, I'd consider making a follow-up if you guys would be interested. West Bengal, India has its fair share of allegedly haunted places, but perhaps none are as creepy or as intriguing as the Aliyah ghost lights. In the swampy marshes of West Bengal, there have been many sightings of these lights called Aliyah or jack-o'-lantern. They're described to be a flickering ball of light that emerges usually in the marshy regions of West Bengal and Bangladesh, and they've been attributed to being the cause of death of many fishermen. The fishermen community of the area have often spotted these unexplainable lights, and many believe that some of the fishermen were so transfixed after seeing the Aliyah light that they followed it and drowned. It's also believed by many in the area that these lights are the spirits of dead fishermen who lost their lives fishing in the marshes. These lights at times confuse the fishermen, causing them to fall in the water and drown, but also at other times, they may help guide them and prevent them from getting into danger. At least that's what locals believe. Aliyah ghost lights are not just limited to West Bengal though. They've been spotted in various places around the world, and these lights have long been associated with the paranormal or spirits. Some good spirits, some bad spirits. It's said that once you follow one of these lights, they'll flicker and diminish in size until they disappear, often causing people to panic and get lost. People have seen these lights all around the world in graveyards, swamps, and boglands, and they have been referred to as many different names. Anaya Carr from Siliguri was on the phone with her husband who was on a solo fishing trip, and when he had mentioned seeing a bright light glimmering across the marsh, he stopped replying, though the call didn't end right away. Anaya would keep saying her husband's name into the phone until it sounded like the phone was dropped, and then the call abruptly ended. Her husband was never seen again. In 2014, taxi drivers in Ibadan, Nigeria were starting to disappear, and while there was no outward evidence of any sort of foul play at first, people started to become suspicious when more and more people would disappear and mysterious-looking strangers would be lurking the area. Police were notified of the disappearances, but reportedly were uncooperative, refusing to investigate further and saying that the men had likely just run off. As the disappearances continued in the area, there was still no official response until a motorcyclist riding down a highway claimed that he had heard some crying out for help from the forest. On March 22, 2014, police finally went about investigating the forest, where they would stumble across a literal house of horrors. There, tucked away in the trees, was a seemingly abandoned building from which emanated a vile stench. Upon entering the building, they were met with countless decomposed human corpses, most of which had been bound with chains. As the search of the place continued, police began turning up other human remains in the surrounding area, many of them having been butchered and missing limbs, some of them even still bound with chains. There were also numerous human remains found scattered in the surrounding woods, stuffed within bushes, in the nooks of trees, or dumped into holes in the ground or into caves. The corpses and remains were in various states of decomposition, many of them missing limbs or internal organs. In total, over 20 decomposed human bodies and hundreds of human skulls were found in the forest, and there was a separate building full of only personal belongings of the victims, including licenses, clothing, and even children's toys. 15 people were rescued who were chained up in captivity, all severely malnourished. When police interviewed them, in most cases they could not identify the people who had taken them, but they described that they had been kidnapped, tortured, and kept in shackles with once-a-week feedings. However, a few claimed that the men who kidnapped them had been government officials, or at least were posing as them. The answers as to what exactly happened here have not been made completely clear, and it's unknown who took these people or where they went. And while some arrests were made, no one has been officially charged with any of it. On January 2, 2000, Zeb Wayne Quinn went missing in Asheville, North Carolina. Zeb was 18 years old and working at a local Walmart in the electronics section when he disappeared after finishing his shift. At around 9 p.m., he had plans to travel a moderate distance with his coworker Robert Jason Owens to buy a new car. Zeb met Robert in the Walmart parking lot before they drove separately to look at the vehicle. The two men were seen on surveillance footage at a nearby gas station at approximately 9:15 p.m. purchasing sodas at a convenience store. According to Robert, after leaving the gas station, Zeb signaled for him to pull over by flashing his headlights. Zeb told him that he had received a page and needed to return the call. After he returned from using a payphone, Robert described Zeb as frantic and nervous. Zeb told him that he needed to cancel their plans to view the car, and he eventually sped off, rear-ending Robert's truck in the process. Hours later, Robert was treated at a hospital for fractured ribs and a head injury that he claimed was due to a second car accident that same evening. No accident report was ever filed with police. The following afternoon, Zeb's mother Denise filed a missing persons report. 2 days after he was last seen, a man claiming to be Zeb placed a phone call to the Walmart where he worked. The man told Zeb's coworker that he would not be coming to work due to coming down with a fever, but the coworker recognized that the voice was not Zeb's. The phone call was placed back to a Volvo plant where Robert worked. When questioned, Robert admitted to making the phone call, claiming that he was doing Zeb a favor after he called and asked Robert to call in sick for him. During police investigations, a woman named Misty Taylor was interviewed, as she and Zeb had become romantically involved in the weeks prior to his disappearance, and he had told friends and family that he had been threatened by her abusive boyfriend Wesley Smith after he discovered that the two of them had been speaking. On January 6, 2000, Zeb's mom received a phone call from a former classmate of her son, who happened to be a coworker at the Asheville hospital where both were nurses, who told her that she had seen his car in the parking lot of a barbecue restaurant next to the hospital. Police examined the car, which had been left with its headlights on, but there was also a pair of lips and an exclamation mark drawn on the car's back windshield in lipstick, and a live puppy was found inside. A plastic hotel keycard was also discovered in the vehicle, but police couldn't find the source hotel. There was also a jacket that didn't belong to Zeb in the car. Police collected forensic evidence from the car, but uncovered no new leads. Zeb's mother believes that the car was placed there by somebody that knew that his family worked and lived nearby, intending that one of them would find it. A couple later called police to report that they had seen Zeb's car being driven in downtown Asheville before it was parked at the restaurant, and assisted police in producing a composite image of the person driving the car. Police later noted that the sketch looked identical to Misty Taylor. Robert Jason Owens was arrested in 2017 for the murder of Zeb. However, in his plea agreement in July of 2022, just last month, Robert's story went that his uncle Gene, who died in 2017, knew Misty Taylor's aggressive boyfriend and was asked to do something to keep Zeb away from her, and Robert said his uncle's remedy was murder, though he said that he played no part and only witnessed it. The judge accepted Robert's plea and sentenced him to 150 to 189 months in prison, which will be served concurrent to a 60 to 75-year sentence he's currently serving for the murder of a couple in 2015, which is an entirely different story of its own. Regarding Zeb's murder, no one can really know for sure what actually happened. On July 13, 2011, Rebecca Zahau was found hanging at the Spreckles Mansion in Coronado, California, and she was pronounced dead by first responders called to the residence. Rebecca's body was found nude, bound, and gagged. Her death occurred 2 days after 6-year-old Max Shackney, the son of her boyfriend Jonah Shackney, had fallen from the staircase of the mansion and was held in a hospital in critical condition. Rebecca and her younger sister Zena were the only people present at the time of Max's fall. On July 16, 2011, Max succumbed to his injuries and died in the hospital. Rebecca's death was ruled a suicide, but her sisters don't buy it and have long pressed their point, waging battles both with authorities and possible suspects. On July 12, 2011, Rebecca dropped off Zena at the airport for her flight back to Missouri, and then picked up Jonah's brother Adam, who had just arrived on a flight from Memphis, Tennessee. Rebecca, Jonah, and Adam ate dinner with a friend named Howard that evening. Afterwards, Rebecca and Adam returned to the Spreckles mansion, while Jonah held a vigil for Max with the child's mother, Dina Romano. There were reports of loud music coming from the Spreckles mansion later that night. On the morning of July 13th at around 6:45 a.m., Adam stated that he found Rebecca's nude body hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and her hands behind her back. He called 911 at 6:48 a.m., then sent a text message to his brother to inform him of the news. He cut down her body before the police arrived. Medics attempted to revive her, but it was already far too late. Police performed an autopsy to determine the cause of death, and from the start, speculations of foul play had arisen, but investigators were unable to find any other DNA at the scene besides Rebecca's. The San Diego Sheriff's Department formally announced their finding that Rebecca had committed suicide, but her family wasn't happy about that, and they were firm on their belief that she did not commit suicide. Family and friends looked at Adam Shackney, Jonah's brother, as a prime suspect, as he was alone in the house with Rebecca during her hanging, and it could have been a revenge killing for the accidental death of his nephew while he was under Rebecca's watch. For 7 years, Rebecca's sisters had to fight to make it known she didn't commit suicide, and eventually it paid off. In 2018, a jury in San Diego found Adam Shackney responsible for the hanging death of Rebecca after a month-long civil trial. Rebecca's family was awarded more than $5 million for loss of companionship. The 12-member jury found Shackney responsible for her death in a 9-3 vote. The majority agreed Adam touched Rebecca with intent to harm her before her death, and the touching caused her death. The court never awarded any punitive damages. Because this was a civil trial, Adam didn't face any criminal charges and cannot be sentenced to prison. Regardless of the civil suit, the findings by police allegedly pointed at Jonah and Adam being innocent and Rebecca's death being a suicide. But the biggest flaw in that would be the way in which Rebecca's body was found hanging, bound and gagged. It's not something somebody would do to themselves. Still, what really happened may never be known for sure. In this footage submitted by Jason, something happens that if it weren't caught on dashcam, you wouldn't believe it. It was around 1 in the morning. Jason was on his way to what he thought was going to be the house of a woman he matched with on a dating app. The person had given Jason their address over the app. They had not exchanged numbers. After putting the address into his phone, he realized that not only was the address 20 minutes away, it was also in a less desirable side of town. Against his better judgment, he got in his car anyway to head to the given address, which was in a cul-de-sac. After entering the cul-de-sac, he realized all 3 houses had all their lights out. He tried to message the girl he matched on the dating app. She no longer answered. After waiting a few minutes for an answer, he realized the person had unmatched him, meaning it may have been a trick or prank. So he turned the car around. As he was leaving the cul-de-sac, he noticed someone on the sidewalk stepping out into the street. So he locks his doors and slows down. This is the footage captured on the dash cam. Footage is kind of grainy, so it's hard to make out some of the smaller details. But basically what happened, Jason slowed down as he saw a masked person walking into the middle of the street, immediately knowing something was off because there was nothing across the street except a busy highway. So he locks his door and comes to a stop as the person is directly in front of his car. Then the masked person reaches into his pocket, grabs a handgun that's a little hard to see in the video due to lighting, and starts running towards his driver's side door. Jason immediately steps on the gas and drives past the man, who then tries to open the door, which thankfully was locked mere seconds earlier. It's hard to see unless you pause and zoom in, but the man in the video was wearing a creepy smiling mask. The man didn't fire any rounds, but that's also under the assumption that the gun was even loaded or real. It's not that uncommon to hear about people using fake guns in scenarios like this. What was strange about this was while even though it was in a less desirable end of town, it was still a very residential block right next to a highway, so it was a slightly questionable place to pull this. However, it doesn't take a detective to put the pieces together that this was a setup through the dating app to lure some unsuspecting guy to a dead-end road in order to rob him at gunpoint or worse. According to Jason, the spot in which the man stepped into the street was out of view of any houses as it ran alongside a long fence and bushes. Jason reported the whole incident to the police, including the given address. Jason was accompanied with a police officer to knock on the door of the address in question the next day, and an older woman who claimed to live alone answered the door. She claimed she had nothing to do with it, and that's obviously pretty likely to be the truth, meaning a random person simply chose that address because the street was low-key and hidden, debatably a perfect spot to try and set somebody up. Luckily, Jason didn't decide to stay put and got away without harm, because who knows what could have happened. Before the next clip, I just want to talk about today's sponsor, Aura. I read a lot of horror stories on this channel, but a growing horror story in America that more and more people are falling victim to is identity theft, with there being a new victim every 14 seconds.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
You may be unpleasantly surprised to learn how easy it is for your information like passwords to be leaked in a data breach, and with this information, hackers and scammers can gain access to a whole lot more of your information. Luckily, Aura provides identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus software, and more all combined into one app, serving as an ideal one-stop shop. I personally have been the victim of data breaches, and because of this, a lot of my accounts have been hacked. The feeling of trying to log into my accounts only to see the passwords had been changed actually made me sick to my stomach. Some of you may even remember my Twitter account was publicly hacked like 6 years ago, and being a YouTuber that keeps most of my info on the more private side, I definitely find myself being a target of these things quite often, and Aura has been a huge help in keeping my information secure, constantly alerting me anytime my passwords are compromised. Right now, if you click the link in the description or go to aura.com/MrNightmare, you'll get a 2-week free trial, no commitment necessary. Aura also offers a 60-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. If you care about your security, I do personally recommend the app. On November 23, 2016, the day before Thanksgiving, a fire began on the Chimney Tops Trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The fire was sparked by a group of kids playing with matches in the woods, and it was fueled by unusually high winds. Flames erupted in a remote area with steep terrain that made access to the fire difficult for firefighters. Crews spent 3 days working to create a containment area lower down the mountain. Helicopters flew overhead doing bucket drops to attempt to slow the spread of the fire. On the 4th day, winds picked up and the fire spread, but the Gatlinburg fire chief said projections showed no immediate threat to Gatlinburg. Despite the predictions, on Monday, November 28th, dry weather and extreme winds caused the fire to grow rapidly. That evening, wind gusts of up to 87 miles per hour sent embers flying into Gatlinburg, wreaking havoc on the city and surrounding communities. Town officials reported that evacuation alerts were sent out to residents' cell phones, but many residents said they never received any alerts. 14 people were killed and 191 people were injured in the fire. The flames destroyed nearly 2,500 homes and left an estimated $2 billion worth of damages. Resident Michael Luciano recorded his and his stepbrother's horrifying escape down the mountain. During the drive down, just about every single passing cabin is seen engulfed in flames.
Oh, God.
Thanks, Lord.
We'll get out of it. Hit the gas.
I can't see.
You can see. Why is every cabin on fire? Fuck. I don't know about this. Dude, just started at Natty Branch. We're going the wrong way.
What?
Oh God, that was a beautiful cabin too. Not now.
And at multiple points, the two men find themselves stuck behind fallen trees.
Fuck, go through it. Go through it.
I can't.
We cannot be stuck. Try it on the left side where these sticks are short. Get a running start.
Even at one point getting stuck behind another driver, which happened to be an old man who rolled his window down to tell Michael that he couldn't see.
Does this motherfucker want to die here? What the f*** is wrong with you? Go! Get the fuck out of here!
The old man ended up pulling to the side and following Michael's taillights down the mountain. At certain points, it seems very likely the men aren't going to make it out alive. But by some stroke of luck, they made it to the containment area with only minor damages to their truck. Their luck didn't just end there though. Their cabin survived the fires with very little damage, despite its close proximity to the surrounding engulfing flames. While this footage can almost make you feel like you're in the truck with them, it obviously can't compare to the actual fear of being in the suffocating heat inside the truck mixed with tension of the life or death situation at hand. In this footage, a young girl who wished to remain nameless, so I'll refer to her as Amanda, was driving home from her boyfriend's house. She had just pulled out of the driveway and started heading down her boyfriend's block when a car in the middle of the road came into view. The car wasn't moving but didn't have its hazards on, so Amanda waited for a few moments until the driver in front of her lowered his window and waved for her to go around him, so she did. Upon passing the car, she quickly realized the car behind her started moving as well, which at first wasn't too weird, but it became clear very soon that the car was following her after it started making the same turns she made. She started to make as many random turns as possible, and sure enough the car behind her stayed on her tail. She then calls her boyfriend, which I muted at her request for privacy, and she explained to him that somebody was following her. He reassured her to keep calm and everything would be fine, and to just drive to the nearest police station. So she looked up the nearest police precincts, and when they were only a few blocks away from it, the car behind her turned the opposite way, likely because they knew she was going to the police station. Still on the phone with her boyfriend, she told him the car behind her turned a different direction, so her boyfriend assured her she should be fine to go straight home. Just be cautious. Amanda drove home after this, which was in the same town, so it was unlikely to be a long trip home. She even checked to make sure the coast was clear before parking her car and going inside. But later in the night, she woke up to this.
What the fuck is that?
Amanda heard sounds right outside her bedroom window, like someone was trying to lift it open from the outside. Once she turned the lamp on, the noise stopped. She called for her dad when she realized what was happening, and the occurrence was immediately associated with the vehicle that was following her earlier. So the family called the police to file a police report and showed them the dashcam footage of the vehicle following her. The vehicle could be identified as a BMW, and Amanda was asked if she knew anyone who owned a BMW that might want to hurt her. The only person she could think of was a guy named Christopher Crea, somebody who she blocked on social media for obsessive harassment, who happened to drive a black BMW. These were the last texts Christopher had sent to Amanda before she blocked him. Christopher happened to know Amanda's boyfriend personally through mutual friends, and through those connections, he knew where he lived, so the idea that this Christopher guy waited outside Amanda's boyfriend's house suddenly became a possibility. As an idle threat, Amanda's boyfriend sent an Instagram DM to Christopher that she was filing for a restraining order if he bothered her again, but his response was him acting confused and claiming he hadn't bothered her. Whether it was acting or not is a mystery, but nothing happens again at Amanda's house after that, so it doesn't seem too far-fetched that it could have been this Christopher guy. The following dashcam footage was taken in the vehicle of Uber driver Christina Spikuza, and I want to warn you, while there is no actual graphic footage shown, the story behind it is upsetting. 38-year-old mother of four Christina Spikuza was doing some night drives on February 10th, 2022, when 22-year-old Calvin Crew used his girlfriend's phone to order an Uber. Christina accepted the ride and picked Calvin up. He gets into the car in a sketchy mask covering his entire face except for his glowing eyes. She greets him by asking for Tanea and how are you today, but he doesn't answer either question, or if he did, it was likely an inaudible grunt.
Hi, for Tanea. How are you today?
Christina was extremely polite to Calvin, even asking how his day was going a few minutes in.
Did you have a good day today?
Calvin is seen turning to check if the coast was clear, and then lifting his mask up slightly before pulling a gun on Christina and threatening her.
I'm sorry?
Keep driving.
You've got to be joking.
Keep driving.
What are you doing?
This is a gun. Keep driving.
No, it's not. Stop. Come on, man. I got a family. What are you
I got
doing?
a family too. Now drive.
What are you doing?
Drive.
Please stop.
Drive the car, miss.
Why are
Just
you
drive.
doing
Don't
this?
Don't make this so noticeable. Just drive.
Why are you doing this?
Drive the car.
To where?
Complete the trip.
I cannot do that.
Complete the trip.
Why are you doing this?
Complete the trip.
Please?
He tells her to cancel the ride so that it could no longer be tracked. Not long after, he grabs her phone to gain access to her banking apps to transfer money to his girlfriend's
Get
phone.
off of me. Please. No, no.
Keep driving.
Before grabbing the dash cam and throwing it out the window, he tells her that everything will be okay if she does what he says.
Do what I say and everything will be alright.
But that later proved to be a lie. Christina's body was discovered by an Amazon driver 2 days later, lying in the woods 50 feet off the road, with a single gunshot wound to the head. Detectives found Christina's dashboard camera along the route of her last Uber ride, and the footage provided all the evidence necessary to prosecute Calvin for her murder. Prosecutors are currently seeking the death penalty for Calvin. There are countless Christmas horror movies focused on killer Santas, but maybe not so surprisingly, there have been some real-life killer Santas out there, and in this video I'm going to tell you about the disturbing stories of a couple of them. Just a heads up, this video may not be holly jolly, and there are some darker themes. Joseph and Alice Ortega loved Christmas. It was their favorite time of year to spend with their family. Their two oldest sons, James and Charles, and their daughters Letitia, Alicia, and Sylvia. On Christmas Eve of 2008, the Ortega family invited all 5 of their adult children and their families to their home in Covina, California, a middle to upper middle class, low crime community about 20 miles east of Los Angeles. The family was in the middle of a Christmas Eve poker game when the doorbell rang, and what unfolded next was unimaginable. Shortly after the doorbell sounded, police received 911 calls from the Ortega's neighbor. The caller cried into the phone that someone was burning down the Ortega's house. That someone was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, dressed in a Santa Claus suit. The fire department was dispatched to the Ortega house, but the calls kept coming in. Some even reported that they heard shooting coming from the house, and when the police arrived at the scene, it was a total nightmare. The only surviving Ortega family members police could locate was Letitia, her husband, and their 8-year-old daughter, who managed to escape the house and make it to a neighbor's house.
Immediately. Who's in your house? Immediately. Ma'am, is the guy in your house right now? We're having 2 houses down on the cul-de-sac. Okay. Ma'am, hold on. Is he at your house? Yes, he's constantly shooting. What do you think his name is, Bruce? His name is Bruce Pardo. Okay, and who is he to you guys? Who is he to you? He's my ex-brother-in-law. They're going through a divorce right now. Okay. With my sister. Hold on 1 second, okay? I don't know who else is alive. I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay? My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people. I know. It's okay, the officers are there. They're trying to get to you guys, okay?
Letitia's daughter, however, had been shot, so the family had already made their way to the hospital. What happened was Sylvia Ortega Pardo, Bruce Pardo's soon-to-be ex-wife, had finalized their divorce the week prior to the attack. This apparently caused Bruce to snap in the worst way imaginable, and this was his way of getting revenge. Bruce had arrived at the Ortega home in a Santa costume with a gift-wrapped package containing a rolling air compressor converted to deliver gasoline from it, and at least 4 9mm semi-automatic handguns. His 8-year-old niece Katrina, the daughter of Letitia, ran to answer the door in excitement to be greeted with the Santa, only to be shot in the face. Luckily, she survived. Bruce then started firing indiscriminately at fleeing partygoers. After he ran out of bullets, Bruce pulled out his homemade flamethrower to spray 18 gallons of gasoline into the house, causing it to burn down. In the middle of investigating the aftermath of this chaotic scene, police received a tip from a neighbor. She and her husband had seen a car leaving the cul-de-sac at around 11:45 p.m. Police started searching the Ortega's scorched home. They found bodies burned beyond recognition, which were later identified as missing Ortega family members. A total of 9 people were murdered. While police were busy investigating this massacre, they received a call from Bruce's brother, Brad Pardo, who returned home from a Christmas party to find his brother laying dead in a pool of blood. Bruce had taken his own life. On Christmas Day, police interviewed Letitia, who said that despite the Santa Claus costume, beard, and hat, she could identify the shooter to be her sister's ex-husband, Bruce Pardo. Investigators then went back to Brad's house, where Bruce was found dead, and searched his car, which ended up being the same car the Ortega's neighbors had described seeing on their street after the murders. Inside the vehicle, police found a Santa suit and thousands of rounds of ammunition. The car had also been booby-trapped to explode once the Santa suit was removed, and though the vehicle exploded, no one was injured. The autopsy of Bruce revealed 3rd-degree burns on his hands and arms, and part of the Santa suit had melted onto his body. Police also found $17,000 in cash cling-wrapped on his legs inside a girdle. Police believed he didn't initially plan to kill himself. Around the same time, a man reported a suspicious car parked in front of his Pasadena home. Police ran the plates and found the car had been rented by Bruce. Though the car wasn't rigged, it was packed with supplies including a computer, clothes, water, food, and maps of the US and Mexico. Police believe Bruce had been planning on escaping to Mexico after his killing spree, and this was his getaway vehicle. The vehicle was also parked about 500 feet from the house of Scott Nord, Sylvia's divorce attorney. This was definitely not a coincidence, and Bruce was likely planning on also murdering Scott, because in June of that year, Bruce was ordered to pay $1,800 a month in spousal support. The divorce clearly took over Bruce's life, and he began to plot ways to get back at Sylvia, and instead of just killing her, he decided that he was going to destroy everything and everyone that she loved. The most likely explanation for Bruce's suicide would be his unexpected injuries. He didn't realize there was an open flame somewhere in the house, likely a candle, and when he was spraying gasoline, this led to an explosion that left him horrifically burned. Instead of driving to kill Sylvia's attorney and then escaping to Mexico like he most likely originally planned, Bruce instead went to his brother's, where he killed himself because of how badly he was burned. Katrina Yusupolsky is alive and well today, and fortunately she hasn't let the horrific experience overtake her, and she's currently living her life to the fullest. But unfortunately, Bruce Pardo was not the only story of a killer Santa named Bruce. Bruce MacArthur was known as an outwardly jovial man who was the perfect Santa due to his ample white hair and beard, and so that's what he did as his second job. He was a Santa at Toronto's Agincourt Mall until as recently as 2016. Bruce was at the time 68 years old, and when he wasn't working as a mall Santa, he was working as a successful landscaper, trusted by his many clients to turn their yards into lush gardens. The sick thing is, Bruce's jolly personality he conveyed was just a front. The parents happily watching their kids on his knee, and his clients admiring their new lawns had no idea what Bruce actually was, a necrophile and a serial killer. Little did one of his clients know, he was turning their lush new garden into a graveyard. Between September 2010 and June 2017, Bruce murdered at least 8 men. His targets were usually vulnerable, having been poor, lonely, or new immigrants. All of Bruce's victims had arrived to what they thought was a safe country to explore their sexuality. Bruce's seemingly welcoming and friendly nature led his victims to thinking he was a friend and to trusting him. Then he would kill them. Bruce was described by colleagues and coworkers to be a great guy who always had a smile on his face. For 30 years, he was seemingly happily married to his wife Janice, who he had 2 children with and lived in a house in Oshawa with, a middle-class town very close to downtown Toronto. In the late 90s, however, Bruce came out of the closet, probably to the shock of his wife, and not long after suggesting that the two have an open relationship, he left his family and moved to Toronto. He remained on speaking terms with his family. Bruce became a regular in gay neighborhoods and wanted to be part of the LGBT community. But pretty soon that community didn't want him to be a part of it, as he quickly earned himself a reputation of being trouble. In 2003, when in his late 50s, Bruce received his first criminal conviction for the assault of a man with an iron pipe in the man's home 2 years prior. Bruce turned himself into the police, and throughout the case, he maintained that he blacked out before the assault and didn't know why he did it. In January of 2003, Bruce pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault causing bodily harm and assault with a weapon. But thanks to his lawyers, Bruce didn't serve prison time. Rather, he was ordered to attend counseling for anger management and provide a DNA sample to police. A few months later, Bruce had his record suspended, so nobody would ever know that he'd been arrested at all. Bruce's landscaping business was busy enough to occasionally hire casuals, until one of those hires disappeared, Mahid Kayhan. Bruce admitted to police to knowing Mahid. He told police that Mahid had worked for him doing landscaping for a month, and the 2 men had a sexual relationship that Bruce claimed he broke off. Bruce was not a suspect at the time of the interview. He was treated as a witness in the missing persons cases. Bruce's approach to murder was usually the same, strangulation using a rope and metal bar. When his victims were dead, he'd pose their bodies and photograph them, sometimes in his apartment and sometimes in his red Dodge Caravan. One victim was posed wearing a fur coat and with a cigar in his mouth. Some had their beards and heads shaved, others had their eyes closed. Then he would take close-up photos of their genitalia. Bruce stored these dead body photo shoots in digital files on his computer. He then dismembered his victims, distributing their body parts in one client's garden, putting to use his knowledge and skill in gardening. In June of 2016, Bruce ended up in a police station after a guy he was having sexual relations with reported him for almost choking him to death while they were in the back of his van. The man managed to escape and report Bruce to the police. And for the second time, Bruce turned himself into the police.
We're inside the guy's van. There's Bruce. Now for a while we're trying to make out once in a while. All of a sudden he grabbed me by the throat, threw me on behind my back. Grabbed me by the throat and tried to strangle me.
The man who reported Bruce claimed they were hooking up in the back of his van when Bruce started choking him violently. The man claims he barely managed to escape. But when Bruce was being questioned by police, he played it off that he was asked by the man to choke him, that he liked it rough.
And right now, you're under arrest. You're placed under arrest this evening for the offense of assault, okay? You've been brought here to 232 Division for the purposes of being investigated for that offense, okay? So, an allegation has been made against you, and this officer in just a moment is going to let you know exactly what that allegation is, okay?
So the allegations are that around 6:30 p.m. this evening, you met up with a gentleman by the name of the intersection of Bathurst and Finch. During the course of your involvement with him, there was an allegation made of assault, which in choking was the allegation made, and that's basically why you're under arrest today, for that assault.
Okay. So, sir, if you would like to provide us with your account of what occurred earlier this evening.
Well, we talked about going for dinner, and he said he needed to take a shower, so I said I'd meet him at the Tim Hortons at Finch and Bathurst. And so he arrived, and we were going to have sex, and he suggested do it in the back of his truck since it hadn't been used yet. It was a brand new truck. I said, well, there's more room in the back of my van. So we went to my van. So then I thought, okay, he likes it rough. So I put my hand to his throat, and just for a few seconds, because before that he's very strong, he just completely turned around and grabbed me by the throat. He said, now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to you. And he had me by the throat to the point that I couldn't breathe. So I put my hands up in the air like surrender, because I couldn't talk. And that's when he finally let go. And then he jumped out of the car. He said, I don't want to see you again.
Has anything like this ever happened before, where things got out of hand?
Not like that. No, not that quickly, or not just like that.
Okay. Things have never gotten violent?
No.
Okay.
I thought he liked it rough.
The police believed Bruce's story and the case was dropped. On June 26, 2017, Andrew Kinsman disappeared, and this was the start of Bruce's downfall. Andrew was different from Bruce's other victims. Andrew was well known and liked among Toronto's church and gay community, and he was the caretaker of his apartment building in Cabbagetown. His disappearance following Toronto's Gay Pride Parade was quickly noticed, and within days, posters of his face were seen all over town. Andrew had become the latest addition to the disturbing disappearances of gay men that had been plaguing the community for years. Andrew's friends and colleagues knew he was interested in true crime and serial killers. A colleague noted that he had an occasional hookup with a man very into the psychology of serial killers and how they functioned. When police searched Andrew's apartment, they found computer files on the serial killer and necrophile Dennis Nilsen, otherwise known as the Kindly Killer. Dennis Nilsen's methods of murder were eerily similar to those of Bruce. They also found a documentary on US serial killer John Wayne Gacy and 10 pictures of Bruce taken on September 11, 2010, using Andrew's camera. The name Bruce was also scribbled on Andrew's calendar, eerily coincidentally for the day he disappeared. It's possible Andrew suspected Bruce was a killer and was doing his own investigation. Police discovered CCTV footage showing Andrew getting into Bruce's red 2004 Dodge Caravan. They finally had a suspect. In September of 2017, while Bruce was under surveillance, police took a coffee cup he discarded in the trash to obtain a sample of his DNA. 2 months later, Bruce dumped his caravan at a scrapyard, which was seized by the police and forensically examined. They found blood and semen connecting multiple victims to Bruce, including Andrew Kinsman and another victim, Salim Essen. This evidence allowed police to obtain a warrant to enter Bruce's home covertly without him being there. Forensic experts discovered photographs of Andrew and Salim on his computer, taken after both men were dead. The timing of this discovery was impeccable, because Bruce was likely about to commit another murder. The next day, police witnessed a younger man arrive at Bruce's apartment building in Toronto. The man was likely to be Bruce's next victim. They raided Bruce's apartment, finding the man who entered his apartment naked and handcuffed to the bed with a black bag over his head. None of this was done with his consent, and he was screaming for help. Bruce was arrested and charged with the murders of Andrew and Salim. A deeper search of his apartment revealed files on each of his 8 victims, and souvenirs from each of his crimes. They included ropes and a metal bar used in the strangulations, jewelry from multiple victims, and a notebook from Salim. They also found a file he'd already prepared for the man they'd saved, confirming that he was close to having the same fate as the other 8 known victims. Police checked 75 properties that Bruce had worked on, and at one client's property in Leaside, they found body parts from the 8 victims in large planter boxes and an adjacent ravine. Karen Fraser, the homeowner, was shocked. and stated that Bruce was the best friend, neighbor, relative anyone could want, a similar description many others used for him in the past. But one major question still stands: were there only 8 victims? Bruce entered a guilty plea early in court proceedings, but showed no sign of remorse. He was given a life sentence on each murder charge. Between 1975 and 1978, 14 men from Toronto's gay community were murdered. The method of killings varied, including beating, strangulation, and stabbing. Police solved around half of the cases, but the rest remained cold cases. It seemed likely that Bruce was somehow linked to these other murders. For a seemingly jolly mall Santa to be capable of such atrocities makes you realize you never really know what kind of person somebody actually can be behind closed doors. In 1991, a 12-year-old boy named Jared Negretti went hiking on a camping trip with his Boy Scout troop that consisted of 14 other boys. They were hiking towards the summit of Mount San Gorgonio in the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern California. Jared was on the shorter and heavier side. Around 6 p.m., 1,000 feet away from the summit, another group of hikers spotted Jared straggling behind and notified the scoutmaster at the summit. They said he was seen shortcutting the switchbacks on his way down the trail and was told not to and to stay on the trail by the other hikers. The scoutmaster, who was an experienced hiker, said he would pick up Jared on the way down. When he finally was able to descend the mountain to pick up Jared, he was nowhere to be seen. As soon as the scoutmaster realized that Jared had disappeared, he took the other scouts in his troop back to base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. Sheriff's deputies, along with search and rescue teams, began searching a 130 square mile area of the San Gorgonio wilderness, a very rocky, tree-lined terrain. Within 3 days, their search was focused on a 6 square mile area where a footprint believed to match one of Jared's high-top tennis shoes was found. Searchers also discovered beef jerky and candy wrappers believed to have been dropped by Jared, and perhaps most importantly, his camera was found. On the film roll were 12 pictures. Most were landscapes taken by the boy when he was still with the troop, but the last one shows a self-portrait in which it seems he pointed the camera at his face, aided with the flash of the camera. It's possible he lost the camera when he slid down a portion of the mountainside. At least 70 officers, including some airlifted by helicopter and some on horseback, were deployed. Some of the helicopters were even equipped with infrared scanning. Over the next 2 weeks, as many as 3,000 people had logged 45,000 hours searching 50 square miles of the San Bernardino National Forest. So the question is, did he fall off the trail and slip down the mountainslide? While it's possible, it seems unlikely that his body wouldn't have been found in the immediate area around the switchbacks he was cutting down. Some people think he may have been the victim of a bear attack, but this seems unlikely as well, as there were no signs of blood, drag marks, or other evidence linked to any animal attack. Some believe he was abducted by a predator, given the mountain is well used by hikers. To this day, 3 decades later, Jared's remains have never been found. On the cold night of February 24th, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba County, California, Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, headed to California State University to attend a basketball game. When the group of men didn't return the next day, friends and family grew concerned. What should have been a quick road trip to see a basketball game turned into a mystery that has never been solved. All 5 men suffered their own mild forms of mental issues, but they were still able to fully function in society. The men were scheduled to play in a Special Olympics basketball game of their own the next day, for which they prepared their clothes before leaving for California State University the day prior. A police search ensued shortly after they were reported missing, and a few days later, the men's car was found abandoned far from the route they should have taken to return to Yuba City. In fact, it was a whole hour in the wrong direction of Yuba City, having been driven up a winding mountain pass in the Plumas National Forest at the northern point of the Sierra Nevada. The car had a few empty food wrappers and drink bottles. Apart from that, the car was empty. The car was found in working condition. It was lodged in a snowbank with no signs of foul play. However, the car could have been easily pushed out by the 5 young men, raising more questions. For the next week or so, police and forest rangers searched the area hoping for any signs of them, but unfortunately any possible tracks of the men or even, God forbid, their bodies were covered by a passing snowstorm. Multiple sightings of the 5 young men were reported, but none led to their discovery. First, a man named Joseph Scones called police, saying he saw the group of men on the Friday they disappeared while he was trying to push his stuck car out of the snow. Joseph suffered a mild heart attack while trying to push his car out, and when he saw flashlight beams outside his car and a small group of men, he tried to call and ask the men for help, but they suddenly disappeared as if they ignored him. A second witness said she saw 5 men in a red pickup truck on Saturday and Sunday, an hour from where the car was abandoned. She told police that 2 of the men came into her store to buy food and used the phone while the rest stayed in the truck. Their disappearances continued to baffle everybody, even more so when the snow melted months later, in June of that same year, because more questions arose. A local man noticed a broken window on a Forest Service trailer, and when police inspected it, they found the dead body of Ted Weir inside. He appeared to have died from starvation, despite having food readily available nearby in the trailer. He was wrapped in many layers of blankets, and his feet were badly frostbitten. But what makes no sense is the fireplace, which could have been easily set up and could have kept him warm, was completely untouched, and on top of that, warm snow clothes that were found in the trailer were unused by Ted. It's possible he lived up to 13 weeks after the initial disappearance. 20 miles away from where the car had been abandoned, the bones of Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, and Jack Madruga were found not far from Ted's emaciated body, spread out from each other. They had died of hypothermia. Strangely, Gary was never found. Only his shoes were discovered in the nearby woods. To this day, no one can figure out why the group had gone in the direction they did, or why they left their perfectly functioning car, which the 5 men could have easily pushed out from the snow, only to separate from each other and eventually starve or freeze to death. On top of this, all of their families agreed that it was uncharacteristic of them to not help John Scones push his car out from the snow when he called out for help, and why Ted didn't even attempt to start a fire or the trailer's heating system, or eat the food found in the trailer, still makes no sense at all. Craig Freer of Scotia, New York, was 17 when he was last seen in June of 2004. He was a popular kid, with dimples, red hair, and a welcoming smile as he was described by friends and family. He was a star soccer player at the Scotia Glenville High School and about to be named captain of his team. Craig also picked up a part-time job, and his future was looking bright. There were a few colleges interested in offering Craig a scholarship for his athletic abilities, and one could say the world was truly his oyster. But that all changed on June 27, 2004. On that day, he walked into the woods and was never seen again. So rewinding a bit, when Craig picked up his job at the Price Chopper supermarket in Glenville, New York, his parents were proud that he'd be fitting working in with his busy schedule. On the dreaded day of Craig's disappearance, he was seen by his parents walking out of his home for what would be the last time. His parents were under the impression he was going to work. His mother, Veronica, had even seen him carrying his uniform with him to his car. But when she went to go shopping at the supermarket later where Craig worked, just a few hours after he left home for his shift, she was confused when there was no trace of him. Veronica learned that Craig had actually lost his job at the supermarket after 2 months of employment and had been hiding it from his parents. He had been pretending to work there for weeks after his termination so that his parents wouldn't know he was no longer employed. It's unknown why he was fired though, likely for not showing up. Very upset with their son, Craig's parents called his girlfriends since he left his phone behind. They did not yet know that she was his ex-girlfriend. They called her to see if they knew where he was, and at first she said she had no idea, but after a second call, out of guilt, she admitted that he was with her. Veronica lectured Craig over the phone, telling him that he needed to come home right away and that they needed to talk to him. Little did they know he was visiting her because he was upset about their recent breakup. Craig said goodbye to his ex-girlfriend and left her apartment located in Scotia as well, and according to his ex-girlfriend, she watched as he walked towards his car, but then stood still for a moment, then darted off in the opposite direction, as if something had scared him and he was running away from imminent danger. However, if that were the case, it would have made more sense to drive away. Before this, he told his mother he would be home in 10 minutes over the phone, the time it would take to drive from his ex-girlfriend's to home. Around the time that call ended, Craig's dad arrived at the complex and saw his son's car was still parked outside. By 5 p.m. that day, Veronica had reported her son missing, and at first police weren't too interested, assuming it was just a normal kid running away for the day because of an argument with parents. But as hours turned into days, and when the investigators found out that he didn't have his phone or wallet with him at the time of his disappearance, they agreed something was wrong and began to further investigate. Police hit a big lead when a few teenagers came forward to tell police that they had seen Craig or someone matching his description walking along the railroad tracks behind his ex-girlfriend's apartment complex, and shortly after, he was seen entering the woods. They claimed that when they tried to call to him, he motioned for them to be quiet with his finger to his lips, and then just kept on walking, disappearing into the woods. Investigators started searching up and down the railway line with no luck. Police dogs were used while searching the woods, even checking the nearby Mohawk River, but all these searches turned up nothing, as if Craig had just vanished into thin air. Of course, after 2 decades, police investigations have largely scaled back, but in 2021, a new lead was discovered. One of Craig's co-workers at the Price Chopper supermarket told investigators that sometime between June 27th and June 2nd, 2004, he saw Craig in the passenger seat of a car traveling north on Route 50 in Glenville. According to the witness, the car stopped at the traffic lights on Sheffield Road before turning left and disappearing up the intersecting road. Craig's family is still hoping that one day they'll learn the truth about what happened to their son. For a well-liked 17-year-old with such a bright future, no one can seem to understand how or why he just vanished into the woods. And lastly, here's one many of you may have heard before, but still remains one of the creepiest national park disappearances I've ever heard. In March of 2014, 2 Dutch young women, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, went to Panama for a vacation to reward themselves for graduating. To make it a little more upsetting, the 2 had taken on extra shifts the month prior in order to pay for it. Reaching Panama, they soon headed for the town of Bouquet, where they were hosted by a family. Shortly after, on April 1st, 2014, Chris and Lisanne vanished as they were hiking the trails in the forest around the town of Bouquet, which in of itself was strange because they were scheduled for a tour guide by the name of Feliciano to assist them on the trails for the following day. The 2 women made their way for the trails, accompanied by the host family's dog named Blue. When Blue arrived back home later that evening without the girls, the family became concerned and tried contacting the mother of Lisanne, who then proceeded to try to make contact with her daughter, but to no avail. On April 2nd, the following day, Feliciano was waiting for the girls to show up for their hike, but they never arrived.
La persona que por un evento que teníamos pendiente de hacer el día miércoles a las 8 de la mañana les fui a buscar, no las encontré y ya al darnos cuenta que no habían dormido en su casa donde habitualmente estaban con la familia, al día siguiente.
He went to the home of the host family the girls were staying at, but they weren't there as well. In fact, most of the women's belongings were still there prior to their disappearances. The women did have their cell phones, but they wouldn't answer any attempted calls. As panic began to set in with everyone, the police were contacted and an extensive search began, with the help of everyone from farmers and locals to detectives, search dogs, helicopters, and more. The search lasted for 10 days, yet no trace of Chris and Lisanne were found. 2 months had passed and a local found a backpack belonging to one of the women. To everyone's shock and horror, skeletal remains were also discovered, and after DNA testing, they were shown to be matches for both women. The story doesn't end there though. While continuing the investigation, their cell phone logs were released. The 2 women were trying to make 911 phone calls throughout the stretch of the 10 days, but they couldn't get service. Although believed to be a possible accident of getting lost and injured in the forest, which therefore resulted in succumbing to the elements, strange discoveries were made that brought that theory into question. Inside one of the backpacks, there was a camera with 100 photos stored on the memory, taken within those 10 days of their vanishing. Most of these photos were normal, scenic pictures documenting what was supposed to be the 2 young women's fun vacation. The police were also able to take the pictures that the women took and match them up with their phone calls to 911. Disturbingly, cell phone data shows that only 2 hours after this seemingly happy photo was taken, they attempted to call 911. It starts to become stranger though. 10 out of the 100 pictures were taken within the 10 days. The other 90 were taken afterwards around 1 to 4 in the morning, in complete darkness. It may be that they were taken to get some form of vision at night through the flash, but it's not been confirmed. Some believe that it wasn't even the girls that took these pictures. In one photo of a close-up of the back of Chris's head, it seems to show a wound to the right side in the temple area and blood on her hair. Lisanne may have been using the camera light to see how bad Chris's injury was. Some people believe Chris was actually deceased in this photo, and that their murderer was the one taking the photo. Disturbingly, there was a hiking shoe that still had a foot in it that belonged to Chris. Also found was a pelvic bone that belonged to Lisanne. As of right now, the accepted theory by police is that the two women went off the beaten path of the trail, and one of them was injured. Then the other woman was trying to provide help and became injured herself in the process, which then led to starvation and dehydration. But this is just a theory, and whether this is true, or if the two girls were targeted by someone out in the woods, will potentially forever remain unknown. But wait, what if the tour guide had something to do with it? A lot of people believe Feliciano had something to do with their deaths. In fact, multiple women have left reviews on the tour guide warning women not to go into the woods alone with him, as he can become very touchy-flirty, even allegedly joking with one girl that he'd chop her leg off. On top of this, Feliciano was the one to find the shoe with a foot in it behind a specific tree trunk, almost as if he knew to look there. There are a lot more details that go into this theory, but that would remain a video for a different day. For now, whether the tour guide had any part in their disappearance may forever remain a mystery, just like the rest of this case.
I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seems like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me that there were absolutely no problems with the car. He introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early. It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because I was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was an old pickup truck. I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. It was the right address. The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number and I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house. I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anybody was inside. Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard, since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see two of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being. The fact that there was no car there leads me to believe that whoever that man wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door.
This is a little compilation of some pretty creepy videos I found on the internet the past couple weeks. A TikToker by the name of Eon June was exploring an abandoned nursing home one night for the thrill of it, planning to post it to his TikTok. Little did he know he'd capture more than he bargained for. In the darkness, he could see a figure further down the hallway walking across, and immediately knowing it looked like a person, he turned around and left. After getting home, he tweaked the brightness of the clip, and this was what he saw. So he returned to the nursing home later that night with a friend this time, recording once again, trying to catch something else on video in that same hallway. This is how that went.
I swear I saw something there. Come on. Try to. Oh, what the? I saw that. That was actually a person. Bro, I'm not joking. Let's get out of here. Come on.
Hold on. Come on.
No, dude, that's
Oh,
actually,
yeah, now you're scared that there's...
that's actually a person.
The two are both apprehensive about moving further into the hallway where there was once again a black figure seen walking into one of the adjacent rooms out of
I
sight.
can heal him down. I'm not fucking playing.
I can't hear anything, dude.
You're an idiot.
You're fucking crazy.
No, I'm not. Guarantee you 100%. But walks past again, it's a real person. This, I'll throw it at him. Whatever it is.
As the two friends are making their way back out of the hallway, they hear a terrifying scream that barely sounds human, and the video cuts right there.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Hey, let's go.
Alright.
I know I saw something, and I know I'm not fucking crazy.
Security guards can see some pretty creepy things while working the overnight shifts. In this video, a security guard is left confused when he learns of a new employee he wasn't informed about. However, when he's shown the security footage capturing his perceived interaction with the new employee, he discovers something pretty terrifying.
Hey, watch this, y'all. This man, he called his boss asking him, why didn't y'all tell me they had a new employee, right? He constantly looking back, right? He talking to somebody, right? Just watch, this is creepy. Look, having a whole conversation with somebody, right? Saying that somebody came and he dapping that person off and everything. Now see, look, y'all see when he dapped them off, look what happened. He dapped them off, you see that shadow? And then the shadow goes over here and he pulling the chair out for him. He swore to God he sat there and had a whole conversation with this person. He moved over talking to him and everything.
This apparently isn't the only time this exact scenario has happened. In this next clip, which was filmed by a coworker of another security guard through a CCTV feed, the guard can be seen talking and gesticulating as though having a conversation with someone in one of the building's corridors.
Who is he talking to?
When asked by a coworker over the radio who he was talking to, the guard replied that he had been chatting with a woman named Miss Abigail, who had asked him about a man named Mr. Griffin.
Dispatch to 329.
329, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to a elderly lady. I saw her walking by the store and she said she's looking for Mr. Griffin. Her name is Miss Abigail.
Did you say Miss Abigail?
Yes, ma'am. She says she wants to see Mr. Griffin, and I told her that the canvas is closed, that she should come tomorrow morning, and she might see Mr. Griffin.
Are you sure you're saying Miss Abigail? Like, she's been passed on for 2 years now.
Come again with that, please?
Miss Abigail is she died 2 years ago.
You mean you can't see the person I'm talking to?
No, there's nobody in front of you at all.
As his coworker quickly pointed out, however, Miss Abigail had died 2 years prior. In the comfort of his own bedroom, a young man is practicing piano, ironically the Silent Hill theme song, when he sees this. If you didn't see it, look closer at the reflection in the TV screen. A black figure can be seen sitting on the bed in the reflection of the TV, but when he turns to look, and when he turns back to the TV, the figure that was there 3 seconds ago is no longer there. Witnessing this while practicing the theme song to Silent Hill would surely be an unnerving experience, to say the least. A man starts to hear his wife's voice calling him from downstairs. The problem is, the man is home alone while his wife is away on a trip. She hadn't been home for 2 weeks at the time this was recorded, and he should have been home alone. Along with the calls from his wife's voice, there's the repeated sound of a door being slammed shut. A security camera in the house shows another angle capturing the door making this noise, being opened and closed seemingly by itself. And while all of this is going on, the rotating horse carousel music box in the TV stand starts playing music by itself. Some people suggest this could be a skinwalker, disguising itself as the man's wife. Others suggest it's just a straight-up demon, which was summoned by using the Ouija board also tucked in the bottom of the TV stand.
Alexa, turn on all lights.
Whatever it may have been, it sure made for a creepy video. The Kinect was a discontinued accessory for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One. It contained an active sensing depth camera using structured light and a color camera. It was intended to be used as a controller-free game controller, tracking the body or bodies of one or more players in its field of view. The Kinect is able to pick up when a new person enters the room and recognizes body shapes. In this video recorded by a man's Kinect camera, you can see him going to sleep on the couch as the Kinect camera produces a stick figure that tracks his movements. However, at some random hour in the night, this is what shows up in the video. It seems as though someone materializes out of thin air and approaches the man sleeping on the couch. The figure leans over watching the man sleep, and then slowly and ominously approaches the camera before the video ends. Oddly enough, there doesn't seem to be any other actual person physically in the room besides the man sleeping on the couch. So what exactly was this Kinect picking up? A TikToker named Cass started uploading videos showcasing an Annabelle's Hugs doll she received as a gift. The doll was purchased on Amazon, and right from the start, Cass felt like something about the doll felt alive.
You guys, I didn't buy this fucking monkey. It was a gift. So you could stop asking me why the fuck I would buy the monkey. I didn't buy it. The person who bought it got it off of Amazon. It's an Ashton Drake doll, and maybe possessed as fuck was not in the description. So you guys, I just noticed something crazy as fuck, and you're all gonna think this is so insane, but I just took out the certificate of authenticity for her, and you're not gonna freaking believe the name on this thing. Are you shitting me?
Perhaps just an unfortunate coincidence that the doll shares the name of the popular horror movie doll, but it is definitely something to acknowledge after seeing this video that Cass recorded of her taking the doll out of the box.
Oh my fucking god, I swear to god, this thing just fucking looked at me. Oh my fucking...
The doll's eyes momentarily turn to look right at Cassidy. What makes this even more disturbing is that the doll's eyes are not supposed to be able to move.
Also, for the people who say, oh, just her eyes are supposed to move, I have those dolls, when you pick them up, their eyes move. Her eyes aren't moving. They ain't moving unless she just blinked right there. I don't fucking know.
If you have any creepy videos you want to send me, check the description for my email.